Chapter 32. Knight's Six-Step Technique, Lock-On. Even someone of Yang Wenjiao's strength had suffered quite a bit from this lock-on, not to mention Xing Wan, whose cultivation was inferior to Long Haochen's. No matter how strong his dodging ability was, the moment the lock-on was completed, the holy light chop instantly turned in midair, chasing after his body and chopping down. For an assassin, what they feared the most was the knight's lock-on. When an assassin's cultivation reached the sixth step, they would be able to learn invisibility, which would restrain the lock-on. However, this lock-on appeared quickly, and disappeared just as quickly. It only flickered for a moment, then dissipated. Because Xing Wan continued to fly horizontally, the holy light chop could only fly forward without the lock-on's guidance, directly exploding into the ground. Pooh! The yellow earth suddenly lit up. Immediately after, the other contestants saw a shocking scene. On the ground, a 50 feet long and 30 feet deep gully had appeared. Moreover, the surrounding yellow earth had all turned brown. It was obvious that it had been burnt by the light element. A strong light element aura rapidly reverberated in the arena. Xing Wan's feet landed on the ground, his eyes flickering with bewilderment. Just a moment ago, he had thought he was going to heaven. Now that he turned to look, when he saw the huge gully, his clothes were instantly soaked in sweat. If such a tyrannical attack had landed on his body, not even his bones would have been left. Without a doubt, it was Long Haochen who had voluntarily removed the lock-on, preventing the attack from truly landing on him. In his extreme shock and nervousness, he practically blurted out, "I admit defeat, many thanks to elder brother-in-law for showing mercy." Long Haochen had thought of him admitting defeat, but the way he addressed him made Long Haochen stare blankly. Elder brother-in-law? What elder brother-in-law? Long Haochen wins. The referee announced Long Haochen's victory, while looking at him with an astonished gaze. Even this seventh-step powerhouse could not see how Long Haochen had accurately located Xing Wan's position. Of course, they didn't know that Long Haochen's mental strength was different from ordinary people's. He wouldn't be able to find an assassin who could use breath control. However, the Star Jade had started to dodge and hide in front of him. Long Haochen relied on his high perceptive sense to keep track of the Star Jade. He closed his eyes so that he could focus and make an accurate judgment. This was also the reason why he could calmly use stored power. The appearance of a rank 5 knight had caused the other contestants in Group 3 to be on high alert. In their eyes, Long Haochen had yet to release his mount. If such a Tier 5 knight were to have a powerful mount, his strength would definitely rise to another level. The most gloomy ones were the assassins. Lockdown. This brother-in-law actually had the level 6 knight skill, Lockdown. How were they supposed to fight him? There was no doubt that they could only fight for second place in the group. At the same time that Long Haochen's side won the first round, the second group's match was also in full swing. Second round, Lin Xian, Sima Xian, fight. Lin Xian didn't recognize the bald priest. He walked to the center of the training field while sizing up his opponent. This was a priest's robe, but this guy was a little too muscular. Shouldn't a priest's body be relatively weak? With a doubtful heart, Lin Xian walked to the center of the field. Sima Xian wasn't as nervous as him. This bald priest never knew what fear was. Holding his thick staff, he strode to the center of the field. The referee said in a low voice, "Because priests aren't good at attacking, as long as they can defend for 10 minutes without being defeated, they win. Begin." The most important role of a priest in a team was to heal and support. Therefore, it was extremely unfair for a priest to compete in combat. That's why the Monster Hunters preliminaries had such a rule. Lin Xian gave Sima Xian a smile that he thought was the most handsome. "Hello, brother Sima. I'm number 1 in the Magic Temple and the first place in the Magic Temple preliminary. Why don't you admit defeat? If I hurt you, wouldn't it affect your later matches?" Mages were recognized as the strongest in the Sixth Temple. Priests were most afraid of assassins, followed by mages. Lin Xian was telling Sima Xian that his attack was very strong and he couldn't handle it, so he should admit defeat to save himself from embarrassment. If it was another priest, they might really be scared by his title as the first place in the magic temple preliminary. But would Sima Xian? Although this guy was a priest, he only had violence in his heart. Admit defeat, my ass. I'm still the first place in the temple of the priests preliminary. I'm coming. As he spoke, Sima Xian strode towards Lin Xian. The light gold gem on top of his black staff lit up and a dense holy aura spread, showing his priest attribute. This guy is really stupid, Lin Xian thought to herself. She raised her right hand and the flaming cloud crystal staff appeared in her hand. The dense fire element instantly surged, and the sticky fire element caused the air around him to turn light red. Lin Xian was not the only one who was shocked. Even Kair frowned as she sensed the dense fire element in the air. She pointed the flaming cloud crystal in front of her and a huge flame shield appeared in front of Lin Xian. It was a level 2 flame shield skill. However, it was cast by Lin Xian. The flame shield was 3 feet tall and 5 feet wide. It completely blocked his body behind it, and the dense fire element heated up the air in the arena. Sima Xian's heart trembled, but he did not stop charging. With a loud shout, he smashed the staff in his hand towards the fire shield in front of him. Is this a priest? Lin Xian's eyes widened. The other participants in the third group had the same thought. With a pew sound, the fire shield shook violently. The place where it had been smashed was clearly dented, and there were many fine cracks around the dent. Sima Xian did not stop. He swung the huge staff up and down. Bang, 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 a series of attacks hit the flame shield and sparks flew everywhere. The flame shield could not take it anymore. Lin Xian then reacted and cursed. F***ck Huayunro raised it again. He did not chant a spell, but a dense ring of fire appeared. It was the resistance ring of fire. Just like the flame shield, this resistance ring of fire was at least twice as big as its normal form. However, at this time, the golden gem at the front of Sima Xian's staff suddenly lit up and a circle of white light vibrated out. It collided with the resistance ring of fire. Holy light explosion. The resistance ring of fire and the holy light explosion collapsed at the same time. Sima Xian swept the staff in his hand. Bang! The flame shield collapsed. Lin Xian was a level 5 magician while Sima Xian was only level 4. There was a gap in spiritual power between the two. Moreover, Lin Xian's control over the fire element was extremely strong. The moment the flame shield collapsed, another flame shield appeared. At the same time, he released another resistance ring of fire. This time, he successfully knocked Sima Xian back. Is there a mistake? Isn't this guy a warrior? A warrior wearing the skin of a priest. Lin Xian was speechless. He muttered a few incantations. Suddenly, 6 golden red fireballs shot out like lightning. Just when everyone thought he was going to attack, the 6 golden red fireballs stopped in 6 different directions around his body. Then, they slowly revolved around his body. A layer of thick golden red light subsequently appeared. Elemental fire shield, I want to see how you can break my defense. Lin Xian couldn't help but angrily shout. Sima Xian disdainfully curled his lip. Elemental fire shield is nothing. Can break you all the same. As he spoke, he let out a loud roar and rushed forward again. The staff in his hand danced up and down, giving off a great momentum. At the same time, a huge holy light hammer appeared from time to time and fiercely bombarded the elemental fire shield. For a moment, in the training field, fire and golden light constantly exploded. Strong spiritual power fluctuations constantly surged in the field. Sister Lin Xian, why don't I understand? Kai asked Lin Xian with a bit of confusion. Lin Xian bitterly smiled. Don't say that you don't understand. I don't even understand what's going on. In a battle between a mage and a priest, the priest is the main attacker and the mage is the main defender. This is really strange. This is definitely a strange battle. The bald priest Sima Xian's staff flew up and down. Like a dragon coming out of the sea, it constantly bombarded Lin Xian's defense. Lin Xian also stood firm. He continuously released one defense after another. No matter how hard Sima Xian attacked, he didn't move. But he still didn't release any attack skills. Lin Xian occasionally added a defense with the fire cloud crystal in his hand. He somewhat proudly said, "Baldy, you can't take it anymore. Why don't you break my defense? Let me see how you break it." Humph. Sima Xian coldly snorted. "What's there to be proud of? I use physical strength to attack you, but you consume internal spiritual power. Sooner or later, your spiritual power will be exhausted. At that time, I want to see how you can block my attack." In fact, he also felt strange in his heart. With Lin Xian's powerful spiritual power, if he used a few tyrannical attack spells, he probably wouldn't be able to block it. Although he was good at attacking, he didn't have any defensive abilities as a priest. But this guy still didn't attack. Why? Lin Xian disdainfully curled his lip. He opened his left hand. With a flash of light, a crystal bottle appeared in his hand. "You want to exhaust my spiritual power? You're simply daydreaming. Brother has medicine. Do you see that? Every pill in this bottle can restore 200 spiritual power. Let's see how long your physical strength can last." Sima Xian's eyes widened. "You're clearly cheating," Lin Xian said proudly. "What do you mean by acting shamelessly? There's no rule against taking medicine in the tournament. Brother has medicine, brother has medicine. Do you have medicine? What's more, with your little spiritual power, it's hard to say if you can force brother to take medicine." With the fire cloud crystal staff in hand and liquid spiritual power, low-level defensive spells could be displayed several times more effectively in his hand. Naturally, the consumption of spiritual power was much slower. It really wasn't easy for Sima Xian to break through his defense. "Stop!" At this time, the referee shouted to stop the two people who were in a stalemate. "The match is over. Sima Xian wins." Lin Xian's face was full of rage. "How did he win? Referee, can't you see that he can't break through my defense?" The referee looked at him unhappily and said, "Are you a priest or is he a priest? It's been 10 minutes, do you understand? You two weirdos, hurry up and leave." Lin Xian just remembered that his opponent was a priest and not a warrior. The 10-minute time limit was up. It was just that he was defending and his opponent was attacking. Sima Xian also reacted and immediately laughed out loud without caring about his image. "Waha, you idiot, brother is a priest." While walking to the side of the stage, Sima Xian imitated Lin Xian's arrogant look and voice and swayed his sturdy butt. "Brother has medicine, brother has medicine." The other 8 people who were resting at the side of the stage didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This pair of clowns. However, what they couldn't understand the most was why Lin Xian didn't use any attack magic from the beginning to the end. Only Lin Xian's heart was secretly moved. She remembered Yi Hua's words. This Lin Xian most likely didn't even know how to attack. Next match, Kair against Lin Xian. Both sides, please enter the stage. The referee seemed to have sent away the god of plague. Without hesitation, he announced the start of the next match. Looking at Kair, Lin Xian was really in a difficult position. This weak little girl was also blind, how could she do it? "Kair, let's go on stage." Lin Xian had already thought about it. She was already very lucky to be able to enter the finals. It was almost impossible for her to get a ranking. Only by entering the top 16 would there be a possibility of getting a reward. It was obviously not that easy to break through from this group. Since that was the case, she might as well throw the match. That way, she could also explain to her brother. While thinking, she pulled Kair's green bamboo cane and led her into the stage. Both sides stood still. Just when the referee was about to announce that the stone pillar was in favor of the assassin, Kair suddenly said, "No need, I admit defeat for this match." Lin Xian was immediately shocked. "Little sister Kair, you..." Kair lightly shook her head at Lin Xian. The green bamboo cane in her hand touched the ground, and she walked out of the stage. Lin Xian hurriedly followed her out. Winning without a fight was admittedly a good thing, but looking at Kair's somewhat staggering footsteps, she couldn't bear to see it. "Little sister Kair." Lin Xian held her arm. "You don't have to admit defeat, I won't be able to enter the top 16 anyway." Kair smiled slightly. "Where there is a will, there is a will. Who knows, you might be able to enter the top 16. Just as the second group finished 2 consecutive matches in an abnormal state, the third group in the warrior temple was also in the midst of a strange match. "Chen Inger Wang Yuan, please enter the stage." After his match, Long Haochen was about to leave immediately to wait for Kair. But when he saw the 2 people who entered the stage, he immediately stopped. Because the 2 people who entered the stage were the only 2 females in their group, and both had attracted the attention of Long Haochen. Chen Inger was the petite girl who looked very weak, and Wang Yuan was naturally the tall girl with the shield on her back. Bang! Wang Yuan placed her heavy shield on the ground with a dull thud. The surrounding yellow soil trembled from the impact, showing that the shield was not just for show. Chen Inger was startled, and her body trembled. "Wow, big sister, your shield is so heavy." Wang Yuan smiled slightly and said, "Little sister, you are from the Soul Temple, right? You have to be careful later, if you can't handle it, just admit defeat." Chen Inger nodded repeatedly, looking at the huge shield with a look of lingering fear. "Match start." The referee announced and stepped back. Wang Yuan held the huge shield in her left hand and jumped up. Her legs moved at high speed, and in an instant, she charged towards Chen Inger. Her speed was so fast that it could even be compared to the knight's assault skill. The shield in her hand was shining with a rich green light. Facing Wang Yuan's lightning-fast charge, Chen Inger did not panic. Her hands made a gesture of holding her heart, and a huge crystal ball appeared in her palm. With a buzzing sound, a layer of gentle energy rippled out from the crystal ball, and a circle of rippling spiritual power spread out like a wave. Although Wang Yuan's speed was very fast, in the end, it was not as fast as the release of spiritual power. The layer of invisible ripples had already blocked her way when she was still 10 meters away from Chen Inger. "Ahai!" Wang Yuan shouted and raised the huge shield in her hand, with the bottom tip pointing forward. Under the drive of her arm, the huge shield actually flew into the air, like a heavy axe, and fiercely chopped at the invisible barrier in front of her. With a soft puff, Wang Yuan felt as if she was trapped in a piece of cotton. Her attack did not encounter any obvious resistance, but that soft cotton feeling instantly bound her. Immediately after, a soft elastic force sent her flying outward. Together with her shield, she somersaulted in the air and landed steadily on the ground. What happened? Wang Yuan's eyes showed a look of surprise. She had fought with magicians before, but it was her first time fighting a summoner, and she had never encountered such a situation. It seemed that the seemingly harmless Chen Inger was not as easy to deal with as she looked. Chen Inger did not seem to see Wang Yuan's situation at all. Her eyes were fixed on the crystal ball in her hand, which was the size of a human head. A soft light blue light shone from the crystal ball, and suddenly, a light blue hexagram appeared on the ground in front of her. The spiritual power fluctuation was very gentle from beginning to end, but the moment the light blue hexagram appeared, Chen Inger's face suddenly became pale, and her body even seemed to be on the verge of collapse. Then, a door slowly rose from the hexagram. It was an extremely gorgeous door, 2 feet wide and more than 4 feet tall. When it rose from the ground, there seemed to be countless lights surrounding it, jumping excitedly. All kinds of strange sounds also sounded. Insects chirped, birds chirped, dogs barked, tigers roared, dragons roared, and countless sounds made by countless creatures echoed in the training field. There were countless carvings around the gorgeous gate. They seemed to be magical beasts, and they all seemed to be very excited. However, it was impossible to clearly see what these magical beasts were. Around the door, there was a faint layer of light blue weapons, and from time to time, there was a trace of green light. Living Soul Gate? The referee, who was not far away, blurted out. He looked at Chen Inger, and his expression changed greatly. Long Houchen's eyes also widened. This was the first time he had seen such a strange scene. He recalled that when the list of names was announced, there seemed to be the number 1 summoner from the Soul Temple. Could it be this little girl who looked younger than him? This meant that she was at least a rank 5 powerhouse, and what exactly was this Living Soul Gate? The most nervous person was undoubtedly Wang Yuan, who was in the middle of the competition. She was not in a hurry to attack, and her entire body curled up slightly. Indistinctly, traces of a domineering aura began to spread from her body, and an intense green light dyed her body and the shield in her hands. No one noticed that there was a huge gem in her left hand, and no one knew what it was used for. Open, Living Soul Gate. Spirits of all living things, heed my call. Return, my partner. Chen Inger's crisp voice rang out in the middle of the training field. Immediately after, circles of white light seemed to appear in the Living Soul Gate, and a white light shot out like a bolt of lightning, appearing in front of the door. Wang Yuan had already raised the giant shield in her hand, and the gem in her other hand was ready to be stuffed into one of the 9 holes on the shield at any time. However, in the next moment she stopped what she was doing, and at the same time her mouth was wide open, as if she had seen something unbelievable. He was not the only one. The judges and the other contestants, including Long Houchen, all had the same reaction. Their mouths were wide open as they stared at the scene in front of them in disbelief. Yes, this was really too unbelievable. A summoned beast had indeed appeared in front of the huge Living Soul Gate. However, its body was completely disproportionate to the size of the Living Soul Gate. Meh! The summoned beast meowed softly, and its soft little body moved slightly, as if it was afraid of the atmosphere in front of it, turned around and ran away. It came in front of Chen Inger, and jumped towards her, as if seeking protection. That's right, it was a little lamb, and it looked like it was no more than a foot long. Its soft and slightly curly wool looked exceptionally cute. A pair of watery little eyes blinked, as if it wanted to drink milk. Chen Inger did not know whether to laugh or cry as she picked it up from the ground and stamped her feet. What bad luck, I admit defeat. The huge Living Soul Gate slowly disappeared into the ground. Chen Inger carried the little lamb, and under the dumbfounded gaze of Wang Yuan, she walked away resentfully. Obviously, she was also very dissatisfied with her own performance. The judge did not know what to say. The moment he saw the Living Soul Gate, he was completely stunned. He knew about the Living Soul Gate. This was a powerful summoning magic in the Soul Temple, which could only be used by level 8 professionals with cultivation of Soul Emperor and above. Through the Living Soul Gate, one could communicate with extremely powerful creatures for their own use. The biggest advantage was that the summoned beast that was summoned through the Living Soul Gate would not be devoured, and would be completely under the control of the summoner for the duration of its existence. However, such a powerful level 8 magic was actually cast by the hands of such a little girl. How could they not be shocked? But in the end, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. She actually only summoned a little lamb. There was no doubt that this was another strange match, and it was quite a strange one. Long Houchen watched as Chen Inger walked out in front of him, and the corner of his mouth could not help but twitch. He suddenly remembered that a few days ago, he seemed to have heard from his teacher that a genius had appeared in the Soul Temple and had once summoned a level 8 magical beast in a competition. It should be her, right? But she could summon a level 8 magical beast, so what was up with this little lamb just now? Wang Yuan, who had one, was also confused. She quietly put away the gem in her hand, and walked out of the training field with a puzzled mood. Long Houchen was worried about Kair, so he did not stay any longer. After walking out of the training field with quick steps, he went straight to the place where he and Kair had agreed to meet. Because in the second group, the match between Lin Xin and Sima Xian had lasted for a full 10 minutes, so when Long Houchen arrived at the destination, Kair had not yet arrived. Finally, he had arrived early. Long Houchen let out a sigh of relief, and stood there quietly waiting. He never knew that waiting could be such a thing that people looked forward to. Duck, wait, duck. A light sound came from afar. Long Houchen's hearing was quite good, and he immediately caught this familiar and intimate sound. He raised his head to look. He just happened to see Kair walking towards him, and Lin Xin was also there, holding her arm. Seeing Long Houchen, Lin Xin even waved at him. Long Houchen. Long Houchen revealed a knowing smile. Just as he was about to greet him, suddenly, a blazing heat appeared without warning. The heat came from his forehead. Long Houchen only felt as if a huge furnace in the sky had suddenly enveloped him. The next moment, his mind was already blank. In the distance, Lin Xin was supporting Kair as they walked towards Long Houchen. Suddenly, she was shocked to see a purple light on Long Houchen's forehead. She could faintly see that the purple light had 9 branches. The purple light suddenly flashed, and just like that, Long Houchen disappeared into thin air. What's going on? Houchen? Lin Xin shouted anxiously. Beside her, Kair also immediately felt that something was wrong and hurriedly asked, Sister Xin, what's wrong? Houchen disappeared. Lin Xin pulled Kair and rushed to the place where Long Houchen disappeared. Her eyes were dull as she spoke. Not only were they shocked, but the passers-by who had just passed by, as long as they saw the scene, also let out cries of surprise. How could he suddenly disappear? Lin Xin said in disbelief. On the contrary, Kair was still relatively calm. She grabbed Lin Xion's hand and said, Sister, don't be anxious. Tell me what happened. No matter how sharp her other 5 senses were, she couldn't see. Just now, she only felt a strange fluctuation of spiritual energy flash, and in the next moment, she heard Lin Xion's cry of surprise. Lin Xian carefully described what she had just seen. Hearing her words, Kair's expression also became serious. With her knowledge, she also didn't know what had happened. Sister, how about this? You go back first and see if you can wait for Houchen to come back. I will also go ask the teacher. There must be a reason for this. Something must have happened. Okay, I will inform you as soon as there is any news. Along the way, she already knew where Kair lived. Although Kair looked calm, the anxiety in her heart was no less than Lin Xion's. Long Houchen's disappearance was too strange. It couldn't be understood with common sense. She didn't return to her residence. Her green bamboo cane quickly tapped the ground, and she went straight to the Sanctuary Alliance's executive office. 10 minutes later, Kair was already standing in front of Ing Suifeng. Ing Suifeng frowned. According to your description, that kid seems to have been teleported away by some kind of formation. Moreover, it was not teleported voluntarily. Then there are only 3 possibilities. First, he has signed a master-slave contract with some creature. He is the subordinate, and the master needs his help, so he is summoned away. Second, he is under some powerful curse, and the curse forcibly broke through space and pulled him away. Third, his equal contract partner is in danger, and he teleported himself to help. Although there are other possibilities, I can only think of these 3 for the time being. In that situation, since he was waiting for you, it is impossible for him to use something like a teleportation scroll. He is not a magician, and it is impossible for him to learn spatial teleportation magic. So, I guess the biggest possibility is that he was pulled away by his contract partner. You don't know what kind of mount partner he has? Kyra shook her head blankly and immediately asked, Grandpa Shadow, will he be in danger? Ing Suifeng smiled bitterly. This is hard to say. If he was really called away by his contract partner, then it depends on the strength of his contract partner. The stronger the contract partner, the greater the danger he may encounter. On the contrary, if the contract partner is weak, then the danger will be much smaller. This is hard to say. Not to mention you, even a professional with my level of cultivation can't find him without accurate coordinate. He may be directly teleported to another space. So, it is useless for you to be anxious now. All you can do is wait for him to come back. Then what if he doesn't come back? Kyra gradually clenched her fist. Ing Suifeng took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, Then it proves that he is dead. Kyra's body trembled, then she turned around and left. Girl, where are you going? Ing Suifeng asked anxiously. Kyra said without turning her head, I am going to the place where he disappeared and wait for him. If it is as you said, then when he comes back, he will definitely appear at the place where he was teleported to. That is his coordinate. Was Long Haochen really teleported away? The answer is yes. Moreover, just as Ing Suifeng expected, he was forcibly pulled away by his own mount partner using the contract. As his consciousness gradually recovered, a burning sensation spread throughout his body, and Long Haochen also came back to his senses. Cough cough. As soon as he was teleported out, Long Haochen couldn't help but cough, because he inhaled a mouthful of extremely turbid air. The air contained a lot of dust and many manic magical elements. Just inhaling a mouthful made Long Haochen cough repeatedly. He subconsciously released a spirit light barrier to isolate himself from the outside air. Relying on the filtering effect of the spirit light barrier, he took a few mouthfuls of much cleaner air in succession, and only then did he slowly recover. Where is this? The forget-me-not ring on Long Haochen's hand shone like a mountain, and the light sword and the glorious shield of light had already appeared in his hand. In the face of danger, the first thing to do was to remain calm. First, he prepared to protect himself. After his breathing stabilized, he discovered that he was halfway up a mountain, and what he could see in front of him immediately gave him a strong shock. This was a world of black and red. The sky was dark and gloomy, and not a single star could be seen. In the air, there were dense dark and fire elements. There were also other elements, but they were very heterogeneous, not as abundant as the dark and fire elements. As far as the eye could see, countless places on the ground had traces of cracks, and he could even see rivers of interweaving magma. No wonder the temperature here was so high. While Long Haochen was shocked, his heart was also full of vigilance. How did I end up here? Subconsciously, he felt the scorching heat on his forehead. At this moment, a familiar call arose from the bottom of his heart. Long Haochen's heart shook violently, and he involuntarily blurted out, Haoyue. He abruptly turned around, and only then did he see that there was a small cave behind him, and there seemed to be a faintly discernible light emitting from it. That's right, that's Haoyue's aura. Long Haochen had now completely awakened from the teleportation process, and after putting another holy light barrier on himself, he quickly walked into the cave. The cave wasn't deep, and he soon saw Haoyue. But the appearance of Haoyue at this moment gave Long Haochen a big shock. Haoyue was crouching there, and his aura seemed very weak. Both Light and Xiaohua's heads were drooping on the ground. His body seemed to have grown a little bigger than when he left, and the bulge at his neck had also clearly swelled up a lot. However, there were at least dozens of cracks on Haoyue's scales, and purple blood was faintly flowing out. The most peculiar thing was that layers of green light were constantly emitting from his body. Almost every 3 breaths it would flicker once. Haoyue, how are you? Long Haochen did not hesitate to release a holy light barrier on Haoyue's body. The golden color of the holy light barrier continued to heal the wounds on Haoyue's body. Haoyue's spirit was roused. Light and Xiaohua barely raised their heads to look at Long Haochen, and a series of information was transmitted to Long Houchen through telepathy. Hao Yue did not explain why he had become like this, and only told Long Houchen that this was the space he originally resided in, and that he was in the middle of evolving, on the verge of a final breakthrough. And at this time, he was at his weakest, and needed Long Houchen's protection. As long as he completed his evolution, he could drink Long Houchen's drink and return to the Holy Demon Continent. Hao Yue, don't worry about your evolution. I'll stand guard for you, Long Houchen said without the slightest hesitation. After once again releasing a holy light barrier on Hao Yue's body to maintain the continuous healing effect, he turned around and left the cave, standing guard at the cave's entrance. This was another space, and everything here was different from what he knew. It would be impossible to say that there was no fear in his heart. But for Long Houchen, Hao Yue's safety was more important. Hao Yue was his brother, and the blood of the other flowed in their bodies. If it wasn't for the extreme danger, how could Hao Yue have forcibly summoned him here? Chapter 33. Long Houchen sat cross-legged on the ground, still using the light barrier to protect his body, isolating the harmful air from the outside world, while silently absorbing the light elements in the air. This world was not a good place for Long Houchen, because the light elements here were pitifully small. It was not even 1% of the Holy Demon Continent. He had to constantly filter the motley magic elements in the air in order to absorb a little bit. Long Houchen took out 2 bottles of medicine. One of the bottles was the pill that could increase spiritual energy by 200. Long Houchen named it the Spirit Recovery Pill. The other bottle could instantly stimulate one's potential and increase overall combat power by 20% for 30 seconds. The Spirit Explosion Pill could make one weak for 24 hours. In this place where he could not absorb more light elements, the effects of these 2 bottles of medicine could be imagined. Quietly standing at the entrance of the cave, Long Houchen carefully sensed everything around him, and at the same time, constantly observed his surroundings. At this moment, suddenly, a surge of spiritual energy came from the cave, as well as a strange aura of spiritual energy. In the next moment, a layer of purple light spread out, not only from the entrance of the cave, but also through the surrounding rocks and into the air outside. Hao Yue was breaking through. Long Houchen's heart tightened. Just now Hao Yue had told him that once it completed its final breakthrough, the aura it emitted was likely to attract powerful magical beasts. This was the most dangerous time. With the appearance of this purple current, Long Houchen was surprised to feel a faint burning sensation in his body. Looking down, he saw that the blood vessels under his skin had turned a faint purple. A strong sense of power continued to grow in his body, and his physical strength continued to increase. At this moment, Long Houchen only felt that his external spiritual force was increasing at a rapid rate, and every move he made seemed to become more powerful. Did Hao Yue's evolution also cause my external spiritual energy to increase? Long Houchen only needed a little thought to understand what was going on. There was no doubt that this increase came from the blood contract. He and Hao Yue had each other's blood in their bodies, and with the effect of the contract, they were truly connected by blood. Therefore, when Long Houchen's cultivation increased, Hao Yue would sense it and gain some benefit. Conversely, when Hao Yue evolved, Long Houchen would also gain some benefits from it. It seemed that the stone ball that Hao Yue had been so eager to use was for its evolution. Just as Long Houchen was deep in thought, he suddenly felt the various magical elements in the air become extremely violent, especially the dark elements. It was as if the Milky Way was pouring down, crazily pouring into the cave behind him. At this moment, no matter how violent the spiritual elements were, they only had one goal, and that was the cave behind him. Long Houchen could even vaguely see a dark cloud in the shape of a vortex appearing in the middle of the heavenly banquet hall due to the suction of the cave, sucking in all the spiritual elements around like rivers running into the sea. Long Houchen could even vaguely see that because of the suction of the cave, a whirlpool of dark clouds had appeared, sucking in all the spiritual elements in the surroundings. Long Houchen was even more vigilant as he observed his surroundings. He didn't notice that on his forehead, the rune of the contract had appeared again. This rune had a total of 9 purple lines. Originally, among these 9 lines, the first 2 were especially bright, but now, the third rune also began to brighten. When a professional's cultivation broke through to the third step, if they wanted to advance further, they would need internal spiritual energy. No matter how much external spiritual energy increased, it would not affect the advancement of the profession. In other words, even if your external spiritual energy reached 2000, if your internal spiritual energy did not reach 2000, you would still be unable to step into the 5th step. Long Houchen only felt that the warm feeling in his body that filled him with strength was constantly increasing, but he didn't know to what extent his external spiritual energy had reached. In his chest, the golden liquid whirlpool around the saint's spiritual stove didn't have the slightest change. This was the liquid spiritual energy that he had cultivated with great difficulty, and it was also the symbol of him entering the 5th step. After entering the 5th step, Long Houchen clearly found that the speed of his cultivation had greatly decreased. If he wanted to increase his spiritual energy by 1 point, he would need to spend at least 10 times the time before. After a day of bitter cultivation, increasing 2 or 3 points of spiritual energy was already the limit. How could the knight know that if his cultivation speed were to be spread, it would absolutely frighten countless people? After breaking through to the 5th step, how could one increase spiritual energy by cultivating every day? If all professionals had this ability, then as long as they continued to cultivate, sooner or later, they would be able to break through to the 6th step. Along with the increase in strength, the benefits of Long Houchen's Son of Light physique began to become more and more obvious. It was just that he himself hadn't realized it yet. For professionals, the 5th step was the threshold to becoming a strong expert. However, if they really wanted to cross this door, they would have to break through to the 6th step. This was because, only after reaching the 6th step, could they truly use the liquid spiritual energy, open the spiritual aperture, and increase the speed of liquid spiritual energy cultivation. Boom! A violent roar made Long Houchen's tense nerves tighten again, and he looked down the mountain. When he saw the situation at the bottom of the mountain, he suddenly sucked in a breath of cold air. He saw skeletons, a large number of skeletons, and they were quickly heading towards the direction of the mountain. The roar just now was caused by a skeleton accidentally peeling off a large stone and smashing it down the mountain. These skeletons simply couldn't be seen clearly, and it was almost endless at a glance. The whole body was black, with different heights and sizes, but they were all in human form. They climbed up quickly, and their goal was obviously the cave behind Long Houchen. Taking a deep breath, Long Houchen took half a step back slightly, letting his body submerge into the cave. In this way, he didn't need to face the enemies from several directions at the same time, and only needed to focus on the front. There was no time to think about the reason for the arrival of the skeleton army. All he could do now was to do everything he could to resist these skeletons and buy enough time for Haoyue. Inside the cave. At this time, Haoyue's body was trembling violently, the scales on his body had completely cracked, and the effect of the holy light barrier that Long Houchen had cast on his body before was completely gone. But whether it was little light or little fire, both clenched their teeth and refused to let out a scream, because they were afraid that their cries would affect Long Houchen. The bulge on his neck had already grown as long as Little Light's and Little Fire's necks, and a bluish-green radiance was constantly flickering on it. Although Haoyue's whole body was just a mess of flesh and blood, a purple light pattern was slowly emerging on his body. A large amount of spiritual elements from the outside was madly pouring into his body, and his whole body was constantly issuing a series of cracking sounds of bones breaking, as well as the sound of armor scraping against each other. Extremely unstable spiritual elements were wildly wreaking havoc on his body. an aura that would terrify even the ancient wilderness quietly rippled. Little Light's and Little Fire's eyes once again turned purple, ice-cold and merciless, brimming with a bewitching purple color. That mangled body was also constantly expanding. Bang! Long Houchen's left hand slightly tilted the radiant shield of light, deflecting the black skeleton's heavy blade, while the light sword in his right hand suddenly stabbed forward, striking the skeleton's chest. As he got closer, Long Houchen could more clearly feel the terror of these black skeletons. Although they were only left with bones, their entire body was as hard as steel, and their strength was enormous. The eye sockets of the skulls were emitting dark red flames. When fighting them for real, Long Houchen discovered that the black color of these skeletons wasn't the original color of their bones, but was covered with a layer of dark attribute spiritual energy. With a nauseating stench, they continuously attacked him in a frenzy. At this time, Long Houchen was glad that he had the light attribute. Although these black skeletons' bodies were extremely hard, when the light aura emitted from his light sword and radiant shield of light fell on these skeletons, they were obviously very afraid. Once Long Houchen's attack fell on their bodies, they would immediately emit white smoke. It was very obvious that the light attribute had a strong restraining effect on these skeletons. Kacha, the light sword, was released, and 3 skeletons were successively cut down by Long Houchen, temporarily blocking the skeletons behind. After his internal spiritual energy was upgraded to liquid spiritual energy, the power of any skill he used would be significantly enhanced. Slightly gasping for breath, Long Houchen quickly swallowed a recovery spirit pill. His spiritual energy consumption wasn't actually that great, but facing the current situation, how could he dare to let his spiritual energy be consumed to a certain extent before replenishing it? Maintaining his peak state was the best choice. In the face of the skeleton army, he rarely used his skills, and tried to save his spiritual energy as much as possible. This was not a one-on-one battle, nor was it a competition, but a real life and death battle. If he was a little careless, he would stay here forever. One by one, the skeletons were shattered in front of him. Although Long Houchen had the aura of one man holding the pass against 10,000 enemies, the skeleton army was endless. He simply could not see the light of hope. However, in this kind of battle, Long Houchen also gradually discovered the benefits of the Guardian Knight. The Punishment Knight's attack and burst were undoubtedly much stronger than the Guardian Knight. But in terms of sustained combat ability, it was obviously far inferior to the Guardian Knight. After the Guardian Knight applied several buff skills on himself, Long Houchen almost only consumed a little spiritual energy every time he killed a skeleton. Moreover, what he had to do now was not to annihilate this skeleton army, which was impossible to accomplish. He just needed to buy enough time for Haoyue. The biggest flaw of these black skeletons was that they were stupid. They had no intelligence, and they didn't have any skills. They just kept charging forward. In this case, Long Houchen could use the terrain and the aura recovery pill to hold on for a long time. A golden barrier of light rose up, protecting Long Houchen within it. The sudden increase in the density of the light element allowed him to recover some of his spiritual power. More importantly, under the protection of the Holy Light Shield, those skeletons didn't dare to rush forward for the time being. As soon as their bodies entered the range of the Holy Light Shield, the black on it would immediately melt. Long Houchen gasped for breath. It had been an hour. He had already persisted here for a full hour. His arms were so sore that he could hardly lift them, and he had to constantly urge his internal spiritual energy to nourish his body. He had already taken 6 aura recovery pills, but this kind of continuous fighting was far from simple consumption of spiritual energy. The burden on his body and mind was an important factor that affected his ability to continue fighting. Seeing that his arms were getting heavier and heavier, and the attacks of the skeletons were getting more and more fierce, Long Houchen had no choice but to activate the Holy Light Shield on his wrist. The Holy Light Shield given to him by Yihua could release the Holy Light Shield 3 times a day. Releasing it at this time, not only did it not consume his spiritual energy, but it also helped him recover his spiritual energy and treat the sore arm. Long Houchen's physical condition suddenly improved. However, the purple air emitted from behind him became more and more intense, and he could even vaguely hear Haoyue's heavy breathing. "Hold on, I must hold on," Long Houchen secretly warned himself. "No matter what, I must block these skeletons for Haoyue." Just when the holy light shield was gradually dissipating, suddenly, a shrill roar sounded, and the skeleton army that was constantly charging suddenly stopped and separated to the left and right. A figure slowly floated in the distance. "Human, there is actually a human in the world of darkness and fire. Do you know who you are protecting?" The old voice was filled with a powerful pressure. The pressure that seemed to come from the soul made Long Houchen's heart suddenly tremble. He released another holy light shield and swallowed a aura recovery pill. The figure slowly floating in the distance was an old man. His brown robe was tattered. His face was withered and gray, without a trace of blood. His messy brown hair had long lost its luster. In his right hand was a withered bone staff, and under his feet was a dark gray cloud. His eyes couldn't be seen, because there were two dark green flames burning in his eye sockets. "He can actually speak human language?" Long Houchen was surprised and even more vigilant. "The ones I protect are my friends, my companions," Yi Zichen said. The old man coldly snorted. "No, you are protecting the reincarnated Demon King, the creator of this darkness and fire. It is because of its existence that this world has become like this." Space cracked and magma flowed on the ground. Countless races went extinct because of it. The powerful races escaped, and those who couldn't escape all became undead. Only undead can live in this world of darkness and fire. "Human, I don't know what method it used to lure you here, but the aura of light on your body disgusts me, and your actions make me even more angry. I will give you a chance, scram back to your own plane. Today, Austin Griffin's aura just happened to appear in my territory. Although I am only a corpse necromancer, I must kill it. Otherwise, no one knows what kind of destruction it will bring to our world after it recovers." Long Houchen looked at the corpse necromancer opposite him in confusion. He didn't quite understand the meaning of the other party's words. He just heard that Haoyue is very dangerous, and even the culprit behind the destruction of this world. "Haoyue is my brother, my partner. I only trust him," Long Houchen said slowly. "Why should he trust a corpse necromancer? A corpse necromancer leading an army of skeletons? As a light knight, undead creatures are his enemies." The corpse necromancer said coldly, "If that is the case, then you will be buried with Austin Griffin." As he said that, he pointed the skeleton's staff in his hand in the direction of Long Houchen. Suddenly, a mournful scream suddenly sounded. Long Houchen felt his whole body shake, and the blood in his body seemed to boil with this scream. His consciousness instantly became a little fuzzy. He didn't care about conserving spiritual power. He quickly raised the glorious shield of light, and at the same time, the grace of protection and the halo of faith fell on his body. The glorious shield of light could resist all negative effects to a certain extent, and it had a special defense against dark and undead magic. Both the grace of protection and the halo of faith were light attribute support skills, and they also had the effect of resisting negative skills. Sure enough, the impact of the scream suddenly decreased. Long Houchen's mind cleared up, and he did not hesitate to raise the light sword in his hand. Golden spiritual power flowed out of his hand like water, and was injected into the light sword. The light gold on the light sword was gradually replaced by a holy white. Holy sword. Looking at the bright holy light on the holy sword, the ghost fire in the old corpse necromancer's eyes flickered, and he was obviously afraid. His cultivation was actually much higher than Long Houchen's, and the reason why he tried to drive Long Houchen away with words was because he was afraid of Long Houchen's light attribute. A series of difficult incantations came out of the corpse necromancer's mouth, and he pointed the skeleton's staff down. Suddenly, countless skeletons broke into pieces, and the black bones fused together at an astonishing speed, and an extremely tall black skeleton gradually formed. Skeleton King. A powerful assembly-type, undead summoned creature. Its body was more than 6 meters tall, and in its right hand, there was a black bone blade that was 3 meters long. With a sudden leap, the huge bone blade went straight for the cave where Long Houchen was. Not good. Long Houchen did not dare to stay in the cave anymore. If the Skeleton King's bone blade hit the top of the cave, it was likely to cause the inside to collapse. He was going to be buried alive inside. Charge, halt, divine parry. Long Houchen's movements were extremely fast, and the radiant shield, which was completely disproportionate to the black bone blade, forcibly blocked the attack of the black bone blade. Amidst the loud bang, Long Houchen only felt that at this moment, all the bones in his body seemed to be shattered, and the blood in his body churned. The huge impact caused a crack to appear on the radiant shield in his hand, almost penetrating through the surface of the shield. What a powerful force! Even under the state of divine defense, Long Houchen's 7 apertures were bleeding, and it showed how powerful this black skeleton king was. The rocks under his feet cracked inch by inch. If not for his cultivation having broken through to the 5th order, and the synchronized evolution brought by Haoyue's evolution, he would probably have fainted from the impact. Holy Light Shield. Without hesitation, Long Houchen activated the Holy Light Shield on the wrist guard for the 2nd time, and at the same time, threw a spirit explosion pill into his mouth. Leaping up, he put away the radiant shield in his hand, and the fire sword appeared. Using the 2 swords in both hands, he instantly accelerated with the help of divine defense. With a leap, he was already in front of the Skeleton King. Facing the holy light shield that emerged from Long Houchen's body, the Skeleton King was also a little afraid. This was a natural elemental counter, and its movements were slightly sluggish. With a swing of the fire sword in his left hand, a light slash sword, and a golden light with a wave of flames ruthlessly slashed at the Skeleton King. Roar! The Skeleton King roared, and its upper body suddenly rose. The power of the light slash sword was nothing to it, but the light attribute on it caused white smoke to rise from its body, and it suffered intense pain. The ghost fire in the eyes of the lich in the air flickered, and with a wave of its skeleton staff, the skeleton army immediately rushed towards the hole that Long Houchen had opened. At the same time, a pitch-black light shot out from the staff and landed on the Skeleton King's body. Immediately, the Skeleton King's bones became even darker, and there was a faint layer of fluorescence emitting from it. The tyrannical aura caused Long Houchen's movements to stagnate a little. Boom! The black bone blade ruthlessly slashed the ground. With the guidance of the fire sword, Long Houchen was able to deflect the blade, but because of the huge force from the black bone blade, his entire body was tilted to the side. His entire body instantly rolled on the ground, and then he bounced back up, shouting angrily, "I'll fight you to the death!" In the air, the lich's haggard face revealed a trace of disdain. Although the attributes on this human's body caused him to feel fear, he was still far from being strong enough. He couldn't threaten him. The Skeleton King was really too strong, and in the face of its attacks, Long Houchen could only think of ways to dodge and dodge, not daring to face it head-on again. And when his attacks landed on the Skeleton King, only the light attribute could cause some damage. But with the lich watching from the side, he couldn't cause any substantial damage to the Skeleton King. Moreover, Long Houchen had already seen skeletons rushing into the hole, and his expression became even more anxious. He constantly tried to fight the Skeleton King, but every time he was subdued by its powerful strength. The lich no longer looked at Long Houchen, and it was only a matter of time before the Skeleton King killed him. His gaze fell in the direction of the hole, and the ghost fire in his eyes flickered, revealing a perturbed and somewhat uneasy emotion. "That's Austin Griffin we're talking about. Do I really have the ability to kill it? If I can kill it and absorb its bloodline, then how strong will I become? Will I become the next Austin Griffin? When that time comes, I might even be able to rely on my will to traverse the various planes. Just as the Lich was wondering if he should enter the cave now, a strong suction force suddenly pulled his body sideways in the air, causing him to fall towards the waist of the mountain. What's going on? The Lich was shocked, and he subconsciously looked at his body. Suddenly, he discovered that a white light without the slightest energy fluctuation had appeared on his body without him noticing. This white light looked very gentle, but the suction force was extremely strong. The Lich's necromancy could command an army, but he was a creature that relied on magic after all, and his body was extremely weak. In the face of this suction force, it was impossible for him to break free with just his physical strength. Dark green light instantly burst out of the corpse, and he tried to use the corrosive power of necromancy to cut off the strange energy entangling his body. Unfortunately, his hopes were dashed. The seemingly gentle milky white energy had no reaction to his necromancy at all. Boom! The Skeleton King's black bone blade slashed the ground again. This time, it almost brushed past Long Houchen's body. Long Houchen's golden armor exploded with a faint golden light, and the armor on his back was completely taken away. However, the white light that had pulled the Lich overcame from Long Houchen's chest. It was precisely because he had paused for a moment that he had almost been hit by the Skeleton King. When the Lich looked at Long Houchen again, there was no trace of anxiety, fear, or anger on his face at all. There was only extreme calmness, steadiness, and intense killing intent. Not good. A strong sense of fear welled up in the Lich's heart, but he could no longer change anything at this point. Two dense rays of golden light erupted from Long Houchen's body at almost the same time. The holy light barrier of the spiritual light bracer for the third time, as well as the rising formation released by the fire sword stabbed into the ground, forcefully blocking the Skeleton King's attack. The intense light attribute even caused the Skeleton King to stagger for a moment. Meanwhile, the light sword in Long Houchen's right hand, which he hadn't used to attack all this time, finally came out. All in one throw, Punishment Knight's rank 5 skill. Holy Sword, Punishment Knight's rank 5 skill. The Holy Sword had already been prepared. All or nothing was something that Long Houchen had learned after breaking through to the Fifth Order and breaking through another seal on the Inheritance Ring. The Sword of Light turned into a brilliant white light and went straight for the Lich. No! The Lich let out a mournful roar, and a dense dark green light erupted from its body in an attempt to block the Holy Sword's radiance. However, the Holy Light attribute was too powerful against undead creatures. How could the Holy Sword that Long Houchen had been accumulating for a long time, and it had been strengthened by the Spirit Explosion Pill? If they were 25 meters apart, Long Houchen's sword might not have been enough to deal a fatal blow to the Lich. However, they were less than 10 meters apart now. The Holy Sword was too fast under all in one throw, and it didn't give the Lich any time to release its powerful defensive skill. Puff! The Holy Sword instantly pierced through the dark green barrier. All in one throw caused the Holy Sword's power to multiply. This sword already had the powerful attack power of a Radiance Knight. The holy white light penetrated the Lich's chest, and the Lich in the air suddenly froze. At that moment, Long Houchen had already exhausted all his strength. When he used all in one throw to throw that sword, his body was already limp on the ground. The Skeleton King's black bone blade was like the kiss of the Grim Reaper, and Long Houchen was about to be cut into two. The Skeleton King's body suddenly stiffened. Just as the bone blade was a few meters away from Long Houchen, its huge body instantly collapsed and turned into countless bones that fell from the sky. Many of them smashed onto Long Houchen's body. The skeleton army that had rushed into the cave was also completely frozen. One by one, they collapsed and turned into bones on the ground. A faint smile appeared at the corner of Long Houchen's mouth. The armor in front of him hadn't completely shattered yet. Although the bones that fell from the sky hurt him, they didn't cause him any real harm. Success. Long Hao clenched his fists tightly even though his current physical condition was very bad and very weak. The after effects of the spirit explosion elixir had also started to show gradually, but his spirit was still quite excited. Long Haochen wasn't familiar with undead creatures at all, let alone had any knowledge of them. However, his abnormal mental strength allowed him to have an observation ability that was far superior to ordinary people. Be it the Lich or the Skeleton King, their true strength was above Long Haochen's. Long Haochen wouldn't be able to resist either one of them. However, being weak didn't mean that he couldn't win. What Long Haochen had just performed was a classic example of the weak defeating the strong. When the Lich appeared, Long Haochen felt that he was the same as the skeletons, afraid of his light attribute. Otherwise, he would only need to kill him directly. What was the point of wasting time talking? When the Lich summoned the Skeleton King, Long Haochen also saw some of the characteristics of undead creatures. Without a doubt, this undead army was obviously summoned by the Lich. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to casually turn the skeletons into a powerful Skeleton King. This information might seem useless, but to Long Haochen, who was good at thinking, it pointed out a path to survival in the midst of death. That was, as long as he killed the Lich, all the summoned creatures would end. First, it was to show weakness. When he blocked the Skeleton King's attack for the first time, although he used Divine Defense to block, he didn't have a shield to deflect the force. One reason was to test the Skeleton King's attack power, and the other was to paralyze the Lich. As it turned out, the Skeleton King was even more powerful than he had imagined, directly injuring him. But Long Haochen didn't regret it, at least he blocked it. If he couldn't even block one attack from the Skeleton King, then his plan wouldn't need to continue, because he wouldn't have the slightest chance. Afterwards, he kept moving around, cutting a sorry figure to avoid the Skeleton King's attack, not daring to fight it head-on. In fact, he was always halfway up the mountain, approaching the direction of the Lich. The Saint's spiritual stove's evolution was comprehensive. First of all, the original 25 meters of attracting attacks became 50 meters, and it could attract the attention of 2 targets instead of 1. More importantly, after the Saint's spiritual stove's evolution, it gained another ability. That was traction. Attracting was to attract the enemy's attention, and traction was to pull. The Saint's spiritual stove's traction power was equivalent to Long Haochen's own pulling power with all his strength. This ability still couldn't attack or defend, but it was extremely practical. It was equivalent to an invisible noose on Long Haochen's body, able to pull anything at any time. The traction distance was 25 meters, and it could only target one target. The Lich flew in the air. Long Haochen had always tried to approach it because of the Saint's spiritual stove's secret skill. He had never used the power of the holy sword accumulated in his right hand. In the end, the Lich's carelessness and contempt towards Long Haochen buried its life. Compared to the human world where everyone was deceiving each other, this Lich was really a bit naive. And Long Haochen's Saint's spiritual stove was the most important weight to change the situation of the battle. The Lich's will-o-wisp pulsated at an obvious rate, and it was weakening at an extremely fast rate. It looked at the light sword in its chest, then looked at Long Haochen on the ground. Suddenly, it let out a shriek. It was as if it couldn't accept this fact. No. The ceiling pillar is no longer there. Don't tell me that after Austin has experienced 6 resurrections, he's really going to descend again? Rulers of the Netherworld, why haven't you arrived yet? Destroy it, heaven's wrath. Along with his hoarse shout, the holy light on the light sword had already spread to its entire body. White specks of light instantly shattered from the cracks, and finally condensed together, bringing a bright light to this world of darkness. Long Haochen lay on the ground, gasping for breath. An intense feeling of weakness constantly rushed into his brain. Although it wasn't as intense as the side effects of using the sacrifice skill, the spirit explosion pill had increased his fighting strength by no less than 20%. The current backlash was not light. The Lich and its skeleton army had been eliminated, but it was still not safe yet. Long Houchen struggled to eat another spirit recovery pill, trying hard to recover some spiritual power. Right at this moment, a deep and resounding roar suddenly resounded, followed closely by another roar. When the third roar sounded, the sound was clearly somewhat weak. However, its majesty was not the slightest bit weaker than the previous two roars. Hearing this roar, Long Houchen was not alarmed. Instead, he was delighted, because the sound had come from within the cave. A warm flow of energy surged from within his body, and Long Houchen felt his weak body suddenly regaining its strength. When he looked down, he was surprised to find that on his body, purple lines were flashing. Those were his own meridians. Regardless of whether it was the main meridians or the thin blood vessels, they were all emitting a purple halo. A strong feeling of power continuously emerged, and the continuous increase in his physical strength formed a sharp contrast with the weakness of his internal spiritual power. Another roar rang out. This time, it was much louder than the previous three roars. A figure darted out of the cave like lightning, and before Long Houchen could see it clearly, it had already arrived in front of Long Houchen. A golden light flashed, and a gentle light element sprinkled on Long Houchen's body. Immediately after, Long Houchen felt his body lighten, and a burning sensation spread from his forehead. Everything around him turned into a strange purple color. His mind went blank again. In the world of darkness and fire, purple light flashed, and space opened and closed in an instant. With a flash of light, the purple light had already disappeared. Almost in the next second, an extremely cold voice suddenly sounded. Austin Griffin. This voice was extremely sharp, and when it appeared in the air, the originally black sky instantly turned a vast gray. On the ground, the flowing magma instantly dried up, and the originally hot air suddenly became cold. "We're late." Another deep and resounding voice sounded, and a large number of black silhouettes appeared in the distance. A huge silhouette quietly appeared from behind these black silhouettes. That huge silhouette was actually a huge bone dragon that was over 30 meters long. The bone dragon's skeleton was a strange bluish-white color. Its main body skeleton was white, but there was a layer of lustrous blue light on the outside. Its skeleton was strong, and under its huge wings, there was also a solid skin membrane. Around the bone dragon's body, the sticky dark aura was like a dark cloud, turning into a black halo that slowly spread outwards. Chapter 34. The eyes of the bone dragon flickered with blue flames, its incomparably tyrannical aura comparable to the Type 9 powerhouses of the Holy Demon Continent. On the back of this bone dragon sat a man shrouded in pitch-black armor. This person was over 2.5 meters tall, quietly sitting where the neck and back of the bone dragon met. In his right hand, he held a heavy sword that was even longer than his height. The heavy sword shone with a dazzling dark purple light. The vast gray sky suddenly tore apart, and a slim figure appeared. His body was shrouded in a large black cloak, and one could only vaguely see two scarlet flames dancing within the hood. "Yes, we're all too late. I rushed here as soon as I received news of the little necromancer, but I was still too late." He was the owner of the shrill voice. A year ago, when we found Austin Griffin, he had just reincarnated. In order to avoid our pursuit, he must have been extremely weak after using his innate ability, and his evolution speed was greatly reduced. However, in such a short time, how did he grow a third head? At this speed, I'm afraid that in less than 100 years, the wrath of heaven will descend again. Necromancer Knight, do you have a way to find him? The Necromancer Knight said coldly, "As the Lich King, even you can't cross planes to search, how can I? Austin Griffin has already gone to another plane. However, every time he evolves, he must return to the space where he was born. We can only wait for the next opportunity." The Lich King said coldly. What are the others doing? Do they think that this time, Austin Griffin will be easily destroyed by us like the previous 6 reincarnations? He has already grown a 3rd head, and is becoming more and more difficult to deal with. We need to convene a meeting of the undead lords and think of something together. Alright. On this matter, I stand on the same side as you. Ever since Austin Griffin forcefully broke through the seal pillar, causing the earth to crack and the sky to collapse, his main body died. With the strength of the wrath of heaven, he can at most reincarnate 9 times. As long as we destroy him this time, and hold on for another 2,000 years, he will never be able to descend again. At that time we might be able to open a passage to other planes, leave this place of destruction and loneliness forever. The Lich King was a little surprised. I didn't expect that even the most indifferent of you would be afraid of loneliness. Aren't you afraid? The Death Spirit Trial Knight snorted coldly. The huge bone dragon beneath him suddenly turned around, and a thick black color spewed out from the bone dragon's body. In the next moment, he had already disappeared. The Lich King stared coldly at the cave that Haoyue had been in. In the next moment, a huge purple bubble appeared, and the entire mountain instantly melted. The Lich King's body disappeared along with the grayness in the air. Long Houchen's body trembled when he felt his feet on solid ground. He looked at himself and found that the purple hue under his skin had completely disappeared, disappearing into his body. However, the negative effects of the spirit explosion pill seemed to have disappeared, and it didn't take 24 hours to wear off. The purple color around him slowly faded. Long Houchen was surprised to find that he was surrounded by darkness. It seems somewhat familiar. Where is this? Long Houchen. A surprised voice called out. Immediately after, Long Houchen saw 2 familiar figures. Tuck, tuck, tuck. With Lin Xian's help, she and Kai walked over quickly from the side. Long Houchen finally realized that he had returned to the Holy City. When he looked down, he immediately saw a big guy crawling under him. He looked at Kai with some vigilance. This is Haoyue? Long Houchen was a little stunned. The thing crawling under his feet could definitely be considered a big guy. It had 4 thick and powerful limbs, and its body was more than 4 meters long. Moreover, it was much thicker than the original Haoyue. If the original Haoyue was like a big lizard, then now it was like a huge crocodile, and it had 3 heads. That's right, 3 heads. Apart from Little Light and Little Fire, Long Houchen also saw that the 3rd head's eyes were green. But like Little Light and Little Fire, its eyes were also full of affection for Long Houchen. Seeing that Long Houchen was looking at them, the 3 big heads immediately came over and rubbed against Long Houchen. Haoyue, it's all right. Kai is my friend. Long Houchen didn't have time to carefully observe Haoyue's changes. He hurriedly took 2 steps forward and greeted Kai with a face full of shame. Kai, I'm sorry. I stood you up again. He didn't find any objective reason for himself. It was already so late. It was obvious that Kai and Lin Xian had been waiting here for his return. Long Houchen only felt warmth in his heart, and his eyes were even a little warm. This feeling of being cared for was undoubtedly what he longed for the most. Kai didn't blame him. She subconsciously raised one hand to hold Long Houchen's hand, and a gentle spiritual energy entered his body. Long Houchen didn't guard against Kai in the slightest. At the same time, his other hand pressed down on Haoyue's big head. Kai said softly, "Fortunately, you're not injured. But why did you consume so much spiritual energy? Are you all right?" She couldn't see Long Houchen's current expression, but from the examination of his body and his breathing, she could also determine that he was fine. It was just a slight injury. Long Houchen said, "I'm fine. Haoyue was in some danger. I went to help him." Kai gently shook her head. "It's okay. I don't blame you. It's good that you can come back safely." In her view, a magical beast companion was nothing more than living in some mountains and rivers. If they encountered an enemy, they would summon Long Houchen. She didn't think too much about it. On the contrary, Lin Xin on the side doubtfully said, Long Houchen, is this how you are? How did it become so big? Hey, it even has an extra head. It's so strange. Long Houchen gestured her to keep quiet. He lowered his voice and said, How Yue is likely to have evolved. Let's go. It's already so late. Let's go back first. Kai was relieved that Long Houchen had returned safely. Lin Xin and Long Houchen first sent her back to her residence, and then returned to their own residence with Hao Yue. The bedroom wasn't big. After Hao Yue's body had doubled in size, it suddenly seemed a little small. But it refused to go out to sleep. Its 3 big heads just pestered Long Houchen, its eyes full of gratitude and kindness. It was like a child getting close to his father. Okay. Isn't it my duty to help you when you're in danger? You don't have to be embarrassed. Long Houchen stroked Hao Yue's 3 heads with a smile on his face. Although the battle against the necromancer and the skeleton army still made his heart beat faster, he didn't regret it at all. He was a guardian knight and Hao Yue was his family. Naturally, he had to protect it. Long Houchen now had time to carefully observe the changes after Hao Yue's evolution. It could be said that Hao Yue's evolution was comprehensive. Its body doubled in size and became much thicker. When it stood up, it was almost 1.5 meters tall. It had thick and powerful limbs, sharp claws, and 3 big heads. It was quite majestic. The scales on its body had also changed. Each scale was oval, but there were diamond-shaped protrusions on it, which made the scales look thick and solid. Its whole body remained black, but under the light of the outside world, there would be a faint layer of deep purple. The volume of the protrusions on its back had also greatly increased. It seemed to have increased along with its body size. The changes on Hao Yue's 3 big heads were the most obvious. Its head was angular, and there were several protrusions on both sides, middle, and back. It was like a connected horn, but the protrusions were not very obvious. However, their eyes had also become larger, and their mouths had become sharper from their original round shape. Most importantly, its head had become a size bigger. Because of the blood contract, Long Houchen could clearly feel that Hao Yue had become stronger. It was much stronger than before. If it was a direct confrontation, he might not be able to defeat it. This was clearly a sign of entering the realm of a level 6 magical beast. Wasn't this kind of evolution too scary? It had not even been a year since Long Houchen and Hao Yue signed the contract. Its first evolution was obviously because of Long Houchen's blood, and its second evolution was completed by itself. It should have something to do with eating the stone ball. This was not the key point. The key point was that every time Hao Yue evolved, its strength would increase greatly. When it had 2 heads, it had become a level 4 magical beast from a level 2 magical beast. Now, it had 3 heads, and it had become a level 6 magical beast from a level 4 magical beast. Whether it was from his father or his teacher, Long Houchen had never heard of any magical beast that could evolve at such a rapid speed. Moreover, Long Houchen suddenly discovered that at the base of Hao Yue's neck, there was still a protrusion on the side of the neck with the green eye. On the other side, there was also a protrusion on the side of Xiaohua. In other words, after this evolution, there was an additional protrusion on both sides of its neck. Could it be that it could grow 2 more heads? If that was the case, what level of existence would it evolve into? Towards Hao Yue, Long Houchen was now more and more curious. Hao Yue could sense Long Houchen's thoughts. The 3 heads looked at him. Xiao Guang was the first to come up, and directly stuck out his tongue to lick Long Houchen's face, washing it. Haha, don't lick me, it's ticklish. Xiaohua and the new head immediately joined in. The 3 big heads and Long Houchen began to laugh. At the same time, Long Houchen also sensed the message from Hao Yue. The next evolution would be much more difficult than this one. It would indeed undergo a qualitative change, but the degree of evolution would not be as great as now. After all, the evolution of a magical beast from the 6th to the 7th level was much more difficult than from the 4th to the 6th level. As for the other evolution situations, Haoyue did not say much. From the message it transmitted, Long Haochen could only feel that Haoyue was telling him that no matter what it would become in the future, he would always be its kin, companion, elder brother, and even father. It was already late at night. When Long Haochen washed his body and entered into a state of cultivation, Haoyue had also fallen into a deep sleep. Although its evolution was complete, its body was very weak at this time. It was obvious that all of its energy had been used to evolve, and it would take time for it to recover to its peak state. Haoyue also told Long Haochen that the new head's attribute was wind. Long Haochen named it Little Blue, just like the color of its eyes. The next day, early morning, the sunlight shone into the room from the window. Long Haochen, who was in the middle of cultivation, slowly woke up. Bathed in the warm sunlight, his eyes could not help but reveal a trace of disappointment. In his mind, he unconsciously recalled the world of darkness and fire. Compared to that, the holy demon continent was simply heaven. Through the window, looking at the gentle morning sun, Long Haochen's heart suddenly surged with happiness. Haoyue occupied Long Haochen's bed, sleeping there without a care for its image. Because the bed was not long enough, its body was curled up there, and its tail was still in Little Light's mouth. In the eyes of others, perhaps it looked ferocious, but in Long Haochen's eyes, they were always silly. Walking forward and touching each of the 3 heads, Long Haochen did not wake them up. He quietly walked out of the bedroom to wash up and eat breakfast. Today, he still had a competition to participate in. When Long Haochen walked out of the bedroom, Haoyue's 3 heads opened their eyes at the same time. They looked at each other, and the 3 different colors of the eyes rippled with a faint layer of warmth. The corners of its mouth rose, and it closed its eyes again, and its breathing became even again. Stretching his body, his internal spiritual power still felt a little weak. When he returned last night, it was already late at night. The short cultivation did not allow Long Haochen's spiritual power to recover to its peak state. However, he could clearly feel that his body had become a lot tougher, and his strength had also increased significantly. It seemed that he should really find an opportunity to test his external spiritual power. He ate breakfast with Lin Xian and Yi Hua. Although Yi Hua could not go to watch the competition, he still stayed behind. At least, he wanted to wait until Long Haochen finished all the competitions and joined the monster hunters for real before he would consider returning to Haoyue City. Xen Air said that Haoyue came back and it even evolved? Yi Hua asked Long Haochen in a low voice. Long Haochen nodded. Yi Hua asked curiously, "How much did it evolve to? Is it because of that thing you mentioned last time?" Long Haochen said, "It should be. Otherwise, I can't think of how it could evolve again in such a short time. Teacher, I feel that Haoyue is really not ordinary. After this evolution, it can already be equivalent to the level of a level 6 beginner magical beast. Moreover, it has another attribute." Yi Hua smiled and said, "For you, this is a good thing. The stronger Haoyue is, the more help it will be to you. It can come back at the beginning of the finals, and it will be of great help to you. You will have a much easier time in the next competition." Long Haochen laughed and said, "Haoyue is still a little weak now. Before it fully recovers, I will not let it participate in the competition with me. Teacher, it is getting late. Sister and I should go." Yi Hua nodded and said, "You guys go." Long Haochen and Lin Xian said goodbye to Yi Hua and went in the direction of the great trial field of the Sanctuary Alliance. Looking at their backs as they left, Yi Hua let out a soft sigh. Haochen is a good child, but he's too soft-hearted towards the people around him. He pays too much attention to family. Warrior Trial Field. When Long Haochen walked into the trial field, he recalled the situation of yesterday's round-robin draw. Today, the opponent he was going to face seemed to be the second contestant from the Magic Temple, a level 5 magic shooter. There was no doubt that this would be a tough battle. He left early yesterday, so naturally, he did not know the results of the following matches. After entering the door, he asked around and found out that his opponent today also won the match yesterday. Just like him, he defeated an assassin. After finding a place to sit in the resting area, Long Houchen's gaze swept across the surroundings. What attracted his attention the most were still the two girls in his group. The lowly summoner looked sullen, as if she was still recalling the embarrassment of summoning a little lamb yesterday. Wang Yuanyuan sat there and wiped her huge shield. Her eyes were full of tenderness, as if she was caressing the body of her lover. Of course, Long Houchen would not think that the lowly summoner could only summon a sheep. First of all, she was definitely the number 1 summoner, which proved that her cultivation had reached level 5. Secondly, she was able to enter the finals, which proved that she was at least in the top 10 of the Summoning Temple's preliminary round. When the Living Soul Gate appeared yesterday, that shock Long Houchen would never forget. Although it was only a dramatic appearance of a sheep in the end, could the Living Soul Gate really only summon sheep? I'm afraid it's not that simple. Without thinking too much, Long Houchen sat down and immediately closed his eyes, allowing himself to enter a meditative state. Last night, he had consumed too much spiritual power. Although the feeling of weakness in his body had disappeared because of Haoyue's evolution, the spiritual power in his body could not be changed. However, he couldn't change the fact that he had overdrawn his spiritual energy with the Spirit Explosion Pill. He had to recover as much as he could. Later, his opponent would be the second contestant from the Magic Temple, who was undoubtedly a level 5 magic shooter. Yi Hua had once taught Long Houchen that the higher the cultivation of a magician, the stronger their overall strength would be. Simply put, a level 2 magician was definitely not a match for a level 2 warrior. However, when a magician reached level 5, even 10 warriors of the same level might not be able to contend against them. Magicians had powerful attack power and the ability to control the battlefield. An outstanding magician was the main fighting force and explosive point of a team. The first match was between 2 assassins. The competition between assassins focused on speed and control. Basically, whoever hit their opponent first would be the one to obtain the final victory. As a result, the match ended very quickly. Before the others could even see how they won, the match was already over. Second match, Huang Yi vs. Long Houchen. The referee's voice woke Long Houchen from his meditative state. On the other side, the silent magician also slowly stood up. He was also very handsome. The lines on his face were even as gentle as Long Houchen's. He was slightly taller than Long Houchen. He was not as high profile as Lin Xian, but his every movement seemed to follow a certain trajectory. Long Houchen's eyes moved slightly. This opponent was probably not easy to deal with. From Huang Yi, he felt a similar threat to Yang Wenjiao, just not as strong as Yang Wenjiao. For the sake of fairness, the battle between the knight and the magician will be 50 meters apart. The referee directed Long Houchen and Huang Yi to maintain the distance between each other. Only then did he announce, "Match start." This time, Long Houchen did not choose to accumulate his strength. In a battle with a magician, he had to constantly get closer to his opponent. Compared to a powerful attack power and the ability to control the battlefield, a magician's body was relatively weak. Once the knight got close to him, the outcome was basically decided. Charge. Long Houchen's speed suddenly increased. In his left hand, the radiant shield fell into his control, and in his right hand, the fire sword was replaced. He had lost his light sword in the battle with the necromancer last night. Therefore, to be precise, he only had one sword now. The radiant shield itself had the ability to repair itself. However, after being heavily injured last night, it had not fully recovered. There was still a shocking crack on it. Long Houchen did not even have any armor on him. The Skeleton King's blade had completely destroyed his light attribute armor. Seeing Long Houchen take out his equipment, Huang Yi frowned slightly. However, his movements were not slow at all. A short and thick magic staff appeared in his hand. The whole body of the staff was yellow crystal. It was unknown what material it was made of. There were simple and unadorned lines on it, and a brownish-yellow spherical gem was embedded at the top. When Huang Yi took out the magic staff, circles of earthy yellow halos were immediately emitted. A low incantation sounded from Huang Yi's mouth in a strange rhythm. The magic staff in his hand pointed in the direction of Long Houchen. Suddenly, a yellow ray of light shot into the field, spreading out a yellow halo. Long Houchen's perception was extremely high. He immediately felt the danger. His body that was charging forward came to an abrupt stop. The tip of his toes touched the ground, and he made a sideways dodging movement. Dong! A huge wall of earth suddenly drilled out of the ground without warning. If Long Houchen had maintained his previous forward momentum, he would have slammed into this wall. Wall after wall of earth continuously surged out of the ground. No matter how Long Houchen changed his direction, there would always be a wall in front of him, preventing him from moving forward. After a while, even his line of sight was blocked by these mud walls. These earth walls were 6 feet wide, 3 feet tall, and more than 2 feet thick. It was not easy to break through them. Just when Long Houchen's vision was blocked, Huang Yi's movements paused for a moment. A ball of yellow light surged out of his chest. This ball of light did not attack or defend. Instead, it floated up and landed on Huang Yi's left shoulder. One could vaguely see that it was a small person with a pair of transparent wings on its back. It was only the size of a palm, and looked extremely cute. However, the voice that came out of its mouth was not so cute to Long Houchen. The clear and melodious chanting and the low voice from Huang Yi's mouth maintained the same rhythm, but the content of the chanting was completely different. Hearing the two voices at the same time, Long Houchen was also stunned. At this time, he had just bypassed the 2 earth walls and could see the scene on the opposite side. Earth Elemental Spiritual Stove? Seeing the small person on Huang Yi's shoulder, Long Houchen was shocked. For a magician, the most practical was an elemental spiritual stove. Every magical element had the possibility of producing a spiritual stove. Once one had an elemental spiritual stove, then this spiritual stove could transform into an elemental spirit to assist the owner in battle. Generally, elemental spiritual stoves could undergo 3 evolutions, and the best ones could even undergo 4 evolutions. Among all the elemental spiritual stoves, the only one that could be used by the knight was the light spiritual stove. The strength of an elemental spirit was closely related to the owner. Owning it was equivalent to having an additional caster, and the spiritual power used was still the owner's own. Simply put, an elemental spirit could also borrow the spiritual power of the host to cast spells, attacking, defending, or assisting the host at the same time. With the evolution of an elemental spiritual stove, their biggest characteristic was that they could increase the power of magic and reduce the consumption of spiritual power. A magician with an elemental spiritual stove was as welcome as a guardian knight with a saint spiritual stove. Although Huang Yi's earth elemental spiritual stove was only of the lowest grade, it was already very helpful to him in battle. Whatever magic he knew, the earth elemental spirit would certainly know. He couldn't let it drag on any longer. Once the magic strength of the two was fully displayed, he would have no chance of winning. Long Houchen made a prompt decision, no longer attempting to go around the earth wall, and brazenly charged forward. The fire sword in his right hand flashed, and a golden-red radiance like the sun brazenly shone. Glorious sun slash. Boom! An earth wall was smashed in front of his tyrannical glorious sun slash. His charging momentum didn't stop in the slightest. With a sudden burst of speed, he changed from charging to assaulting the opponent. The liquid spiritual power made the glorious sun slash far stronger than before. The earth wall was also a 4th grade magic, and the glorious sun slash was the knight's strongest 4th grade offensive skill. Facing Long Houchen's sudden eruption, Huang Yi's expression didn't change. One after another, earth walls appeared in front of Long Houchen, blocking his charging speed. The glorious sun flashed continuously, and Long Houchen didn't stop for even a moment. With his current physical condition, if he allowed Huang Yi and his earth elemental spirit to fully display their strength, he would almost certainly lose. With a violent roar, one earth wall after another was smashed under the glorious sun. Long Houchen took firm steps, constantly closing the distance between them. Feeling the power of the glorious sun, everyone in the third group, including Huang Yi, was indescribably shocked. This glorious sun seemed to be the guardian knight's skill, right? There were no other knight here, so naturally, they didn't know that Long Houchen was a guardian and punishment dual cultivator. Soon, the distance between them was only 20 meters. Just a little more, and Long Houchen's long-range attack would have the ability to hit his opponent. However, it was also at this moment that the earth elemental spirit's clear and melodious chant came to an abrupt stop. A huge earth yellow halo appeared in front of Huang Yi. Elemental summoning magic? Startled, Long Houchen's body came to an abrupt halt. The surrounding earth on the ground gathered towards the halo at an astonishing speed, impressively forming a 4-meter-tall body. That thick and sturdy body directly pounced towards Long Houchen. Earth Giant, a Tier 5 elemental summoning spell. Among the Tier 5 Earth-type spells, it was in existence at the highest level. It was no wonder that it required such a long chant. When this spell was cast, Huang Yi's face paled slightly. It was obvious that he had consumed a lot of spiritual energy. Meanwhile, the earth elemental spirit on his shoulders stopped chanting. Instead, its body emitted a layer of earth yellow light that enveloped Huang Yi. It was actually helping him recover the spiritual energy he had consumed. Spirit gathering, an elemental spirit's innate ability. It could rely on its high affinity with the natural elements to help its master rapidly absorb mana to replenish their energy. One could just imagine how important an elemental spirit was to a magician. Although the Earth Giant in front of Long Houchen wasn't as frightening as the Skeleton King he had faced last night, its defense was even higher than the Skeleton King's. At the very least, it didn't fear the light attribute. Moreover, Long Houchen wasn't in his peak state right now. Clang, horizontal shield, divine block. With a loud bang, the Earth Giant was repelled. A golden light of light's vengeance appeared on Long Houchen's body. He stepped forward with his left foot, and the fire sword instantly erupted. Light-severing sword. A huge blade of light with a rich golden-red glow cut through the air, ruthlessly striking the Earth Giant's body. Long Houchen's movements were extremely fast. It was as if there was a halo under his feet, and his body suddenly rose. This light-severing sword was not only tyrannical, but more importantly, its blade was wide and thick. Pooh! A long gash suddenly appeared on the Earth Giant's body. However, Long Houchen's expression changed slightly. The light-severing sword left a gash from its shoulder all the way to its crotch. However, although this gash looked very destructive, in reality, it was only an inch deep. For an Earth Giant that was more than 4 meters tall and had an incomparably heavy body, this was nothing. Moreover, the reason why the Earth Giant was known as the strongest earth magic of the 5th grade, how could it be so simple? Both of its feet emitted a rich earthen yellow light, absorbing the surrounding earth element to replenish itself. The gash on its body was closing at an alarming rate, and in the blink of an eye, it had disappeared. Out of all the elemental giants summoned, the Earth Giant was most proficient in defense. Long Houchen's pupils suddenly shrank, and he made up his mind. He could feel that his body was lacking spiritual energy. If he had enough spiritual energy, then he was confident that he could use his techniques to gradually destroy this Earth Giant. However, he did not have that much time right now. Huang Yi was watching from the side, like a tiger watching its prey. As long as the Earth Giant could delay him for a while, allowing Huang Yi to recover his spiritual energy to its peak. Then there would be no need to continue this battle. Right now, Long Haochen did not even have half of his total spiritual energy. Although it was in liquid form, it could not be sustained for long. What a pity! Long Haochen glanced at the radiant shield in his left hand, which had a larger gash, and turned his body halfway in the air. His flaming sword fiercely slashed at the Earth Giant's fist. The Earth Giant's body was as hard as steel, and Long Haochen used the rebound force to launch himself into the air. His flaming sword fiercely slashed at the Earth Giant's head. The Earth Giant's defense was indeed very strong, but its movements were relatively slow. The flaming sword instantly left a deep gash on its head. Then, a scene that shocked all the participants appeared. Long Haochen's body was in the air, shield in his left hand, and sword in his right. His whole body spun in the air as he continuously bombarded the Earth Giant. The blinding golden red light was like a giant meat grinder that continuously bombarded the Earth Giant's body. Killing Circular Sword, a powerful attack skill that Long Xingwu had created. The essence of Killing Circular Sword was to borrow strength and momentum. From a certain point of view, it was somewhat similar to the Storing Force skill, but it was an enhanced version of the Storing Force skill. It was most suitable for attacking fortifications, but it was not suitable for dealing with agile opponents. This was because as long as it did not continuously hit its target, the opponent would not be able to continue accumulating attack power. Clearly, the Earth Giant did not have the ability to dodge the Killing Circular Sword. Even with Yang Wenjiao's strength, once he was stuck by the Killing Circular Sword, he did not have enough time to instantly dodge and continue to attack. He could only choose to face it head-on. A shocking scene unfolded. Long Haochen, who was spinning in the air, was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, constantly sweeping at the Earth Giant's body. The Earth Giant could only clumsily try to attack him, but it was constantly borrowing strength and momentum. Earth and stone flew into the air. The Earth Giant's body was constantly being cut open, and under the Killing Circular Sword's sweep, its body was being cut down at an alarming rate from top to bottom. Unexpectedly, it was actually ground to dust by Long Haochen just like that. Pooh! The final blow completely shattered the Earth Giant's body. The instant the Killing Circular Sword finished its final momentum, a golden light was flung out like a waterfall, flying straight at the somewhat dazed Huang Yi in the distance. Huang Yi was a second-tier magic shooter. If one didn't consider that extremely unreliable fellow who couldn't attack, he would be the true champion of the Magic Temple's preliminary round. He had only learned the Earth Giant's spell not long ago. He had never imagined that a fifth-tier opponent could destroy it so quickly. That was an Earth Giant, not an Earth Wall. The Earth Giant's defense should be able to resist even a sixth-tier opponent for a while, right? Two yellow rays of light appeared in front of Huang Yi at almost the same time. Both were Earth Walls, cast by him and the Earth Elemental Sprite respectively. Boom, boom, two explosions rang out in succession. The flying golden light actually destroyed the two Earth Walls in succession, its momentum not weakening, and continued to smash towards Huang Yi's chest. A layer of khaki-colored light film suddenly appeared with the staff in Huang Yi's hand as the center. The golden light collided with it and finally shattered. When the golden light collided with the barrier, it finally shattered into dozens of golden rays. At this moment, Huang Yi clearly saw that the ambush was coming at him was the radiant shield in Long Haochen's hand. Unfortunately, this shield was completely destroyed. In this situation, Long Haochen was also helpless. Although the sword of battle-killing revolving sword was powerful, he only had a flaming sword in his hand. Meanwhile, the sword of battle-killing revolving sword required him to use dual weapons. Hence, although the radiant shield couldn't do much damage, it needed to be used to complete the skill. The original cracks continued to grow, and finally reached the brink of collapse. It was already an irreparable damage. Helpless, Long Haochen could only use it for the final blow. Compared to Long Houchen's equipment, Huang Yi's equipment was much more luxurious. The earthen yellow light was the additional skill of his staff, Earth Elemental Shield. Chapter 35. As he landed, Long Houchen was panting. The lack of spiritual energy in his body made him feel weak. If it was a life-and-death battle, he would not hesitate to take the spirit recovery pill. But this was a competition, and he did not want to waste ammunition. He hoped to rely on the competition to stimulate his potential. Without much pause, he released the halo of faith, stomped the ground, and charged forward again. At this time, he was only about 20 meters away from Huang Yi. As long as he could close the distance in a short time, he had the confidence to win. However, at this moment, a faint smile appeared on Huang Yi's face. Pointing his wand forward, Long Houchen kept chanting an incantation. A ring of light instantly fell to the ground. That ring of light unexpectedly swam on the ground and appeared under Long Houchen's feet in a flash. Then 10 spikes simultaneously protruded from the ground, forming a cage-like shape, trapping Long Houchen inside. The Earth Elemental Sprite's chant was also completed at this moment. Its coordination with Huang Yi could be said to be perfect. In midair, a ball of yellow suddenly appeared. Then, dozens of stones the size of millstones fell from the sky, smashing towards Long Houchen in the cage. If Long Houchen still had a shield, it would not be difficult for him to block the falling rocks. But he had lost the glorious shield. How could he defend himself with a shield? Taking a deep breath, Long Houchen's eyes instantly turned serious. When the spikes formed a cage that trapped him, he knew that it would be very difficult for him to win today's battle. But he would not give up until the last moment. He gripped the hilt of the fire sword with both hands, took half a step with his left leg, keeping his feet shoulder-width apart. Then, he twisted his waist and flicked upwards. Determination and perseverance coexisted in his eyes as he stared at the falling rocks, completing the flicking motions one by one. At this time, Long Houchen's battle techniques and powerful spiritual energy were on full display. He did not use any spiritual energy, but purely relied on his physical strength to flick the falling rock. The fire sword could always hit the weakest spot on the side of the rocks by a hair's breadth. He used the rock's force to flick it away instead of fighting it head-on. This was the best way to conserve spiritual energy. On the other side, Huang Yi and his earth elemental spirit once again began a lengthy chant. This time, his chant took even longer than when he summoned the earth giant. What was even stranger was that both he and the earth elemental sprite were chanting at a very slow pace. Every time he chanted a scale, the earth elemental sprite would follow up with a scale. This was the essence of a mage's combined chant. It was a secret skill used to cast spells of a higher level, and it required a high level of cooperation between the spellcasters. Chanting together with an elemental spirit that was connected to one's mind was obviously the easiest way to achieve the effect of joint casting. The other 8 contestants in the 3 groups could see that the outcome was set. No matter what spell Huang Yi and his earth elemental sprite were chanting, Long Houchen had no chance of interrupting them. The longer the casting time, the more powerful the spell would be. Not to mention using magic of a higher level. One after another, the falling stones were sent flying by Long Houchen. He was pleasantly surprised to find that his physical strength had indeed improved by leaps and bounds. Although continuously breaking the falling stones made his arms sore and numb, at least he was able to conserve his internal spiritual power. Boom! The golden red light shone brightly again. It was still the glorious sun slash. Long Houchen used 2 glorious sun slashes in a row to cut a hole in the cage of spikes in front of him, and rushed out. "It's too late. You can surrender now." Huang Yi's calm voice rang out. He had a confident smile on his face. His gaze was gentle, but there was a hint of inconspicuous pride in it. Long Houchen didn't charge at him again. He realized that the ground beneath his feet seemed to have changed. The originally yellow ground now had an additional layer of faint yellow light. Although the light wasn't strong, it was definitely there. Huang Yi smiled slightly. You don't believe me? Watch. He waved the staff in his hand lightly, and a strange scene appeared. The ground beneath his feet suddenly bulged, pushing his body up at least 3 meters. Immediately after, the bulging mound of earth actually brought his body back quickly, even faster than Long Houchen's charging speed. In an instant, the distance between him and Long Houchen had widened by 100 meters. Whether it was a warrior or a knight, the most important thing when facing a magician was distance. With the distance suddenly widened, Long Houchen was also at a loss. Immediately after, he felt the ground beneath his feet shake violently. A huge mound of earth surged up in an instant, and with a violent shake, his body was instantly thrown into the air. Long Houchen hurriedly curled his body up in the air, and with a flip, he landed on the ground. However, another mound of earth rose up, crashing fiercely towards him. He waved his sword and slashed downwards. Bang! The great force once again threw Long Houchen into the air. What made him despair was that he could clearly see that the entire arena seemed to have come alive. Countless mounds of earth surged like waves, and Huang Yi just stood there quietly at a high vantage point in the distance, a smile on his face, and even a hint of mockery as he looked at him. Earth-type level 6 spell, Earth Wave. This was the most powerful self-defense spell for Earth magicians. Not only could it help them quickly shift their position, but it could also be used to block and attack the enemy. It was a powerful crowd control spell that combined both attack and defense. As long as one was still on the ground, it was almost impossible to escape the control of this spell, unless the opponent's strength was strong enough to shatter this spell. Before Long Houchen could even land on the ground, he was sent flying once again. He was like a small boat on the crest of a wave. Countless waves of earth came from all directions and continuously battered his body. No matter how tough Long Houchen's body was, he couldn't help but feel his blood boil. The referee stood in the distance, silently watching this scene. Right now, he was only waiting for Long Houchen to admit defeat. Looking at Long Houchen struggling on his wave of earth, Huang Yi couldn't help but feel a bit of admiration. This young knight was definitely younger than him, but his cultivation had already reached the 5th level. Moreover, his willpower was really strong. Unfortunately, he was still just a knight, and Link was best at controlling the entire arena. So what if it was a knight? This feeling of having everything under control was really wonderful. At this moment, suddenly, Long Houchen's body that had been thrown into the air stopped for a moment. Faintly, Huang Yi could only see a purple glow on Long Houchen's body. Immediately after, a fine purple light appeared out of thin air, and just like that, it actually forcibly supported his body, preventing him from falling any further. Roar! An angry roar resounded, and a shocking primordial aura instantly spread out from the purple light. It was shining with 9 rays of purple light, and in the air, it formed a magnificent magical rune. A huge body suddenly appeared under Long Houchen, and caught his body. Haoyue! Long Houchen called out in surprise, and laid on Haoyue's broad back. He violently panted. The feeling of his spiritual energy being almost depleted was not a good one. If he was thrown a few more times by the earth wave, he was afraid that he would really be injured. Yes, Haoyue had come. Sensing Long Houchen's crisis, it automatically teleported to his side. A dense green light appeared under Haoyue's body, supporting its body that was already more than 4 meters long. When it was with Long Houchen, its eyes were filled with warmth, coquettishness, and pleading for affection. But at this moment, the 6 eyes on Haoyue's 3 heads were filled with only coldness. Floating in the air, it coldly stared at Huang Yi in the distance. A mount? Finally willing to let out a mount. What kind of magical beast is this? Levitation? Huang Yi was also shocked to see Haoyue. 3-headed lizard? And it was so huge. This kind of magical beast did not seem to exist in his memory. But he recognized that wind-type levitation spell. He laughed coldly in his heart. Levitation is not a flying spell. With such a huge body, how long can it float in the air? As long as it falls, it will still be affected by my earth wave spell. My earth wave spell can still last for more than 10 minutes. Huang Yi was not careless. From the moment Hao Yue appeared, he and his earth elemental sprite had already started chanting incantations again. He was chanting meteor, while the earth elemental sprite was chanting rockfall. The specialty of meteor was its stronger attack power. But there was only one meteor, and it could be controlled according to the magician's will. Combined with the area of effect rockfall, the overall attack power naturally increased. There were 2 on his side chanting incantations, but there were 3 on Hao Yue's side, and all 3 had different attributes. Low voices came from the mouths of Little Light, Little Fire, and Little Green at the same time. Even Long Haochen could not understand their chanting. Completely different from humans, their incantations were short and powerful. The first to complete the spell was Little Light. A golden ring of light appeared around its big head. Little Light raised its head and spat out a dazzling golden light into the air. Suddenly, a cloud of light appeared in the sky. Immediately, a golden pillar of light descended from the sky and landed on Long Haochen's body. A warm current spread through his body in an instant. Long Haochen felt as if the liquid spiritual energy in his body was boiling, rising and recovering at an astonishing speed. Dazzling heaven and earth, the Guardian Knight's 5th grade skill, also known as spirit replenishment. This skill had great limitations, and was only useful between light ability users. It was a spell that transferred spiritual energy. Among the knight's secret skills, it was even more rare than ready. Whether it was the Guardian Knight or the Punishment Knight, very few learned this skill, who would be willing to transfer their spiritual energy to others for no reason. But Little Light knew this spell, and it was directly used on Long Haochen's body. Long Haochen felt as if his internal spiritual energy had recovered by more than half in an instant, and he immediately sat up straight on Hao Yue's back. Because Huang Yi and the Earth Elemental Sprite were the first to cast their spells, Rockfall and Meteor were completed at the same time. In the sky, countless millstone-sized stones fell. At the same time, in the distance, a round stone shining with a yellow radiance whistled through the air, heading straight for Long Haochen. Long Haochen sat upright on Hao Yue's back, unmoving. He and Hao Yue were telepathically connected, and naturally knew what Hao Yue's 3 heads were doing. The flaming sword in his hand pointed downwards, and a golden halo rose. Ready! Little Fire let out an angry roar towards the sky, and a fiery red hexagram flashed in front of its head. Its fiery red little eyes also lit up with a dazzling red light. Boom! A huge pillar of fire with Hao Yue's body as its diameter suddenly soared into the sky, and all the falling stones were almost instantly turned to ashes. Even the meteor that was shooting towards it collided with it, and it was about the same weight. When it finally arrived in front of Long Haochen, Little Fire swung its big head, and forcibly knocked away the meteor that no longer had much force of impact. Little Green's magic was completed at this moment, and a strong green light flashed behind it in a flash. A green hexagram instantly formed, and then a hurricane sprayed out from Hao Yue's back. Although it looked a little inelegant, as if it was putting something, but the effect was absolutely awesome. Hao Yue's huge body was pushed by this wind pillar spell, and like a meteor chasing the moon, it immediately flew straight towards Huang Yi. That's right, levitation couldn't fly, but with the help of wind pillar spell, it was still possible to break through the air and glide for a short period of time. Hao Yue's 3 heads cooperated with tacit understanding. Little Light restored Long Haochen's spiritual energy, Little Fire defended, and Little Green was responsible for flying. It sounded like a long time, but in fact, it was all completed in a short period of time. A triple attribute magical beast? Huang Yi was a little stunned. His meteor spell had just been broken, and Hao Yue's body was already enlarging in his eyes. Not good. Huang Yi hurriedly controlled the earth wave spell to escape. Maintaining this earth wave spell also consumed spiritual energy. Moreover, in the series of battles with Long Houchen, his spiritual energy consumption was also quite large. At this moment, he was already unable to attack again. He only wanted to first increase the distance, and wait for Long Houchen to land before doing anything else. But how could Long Houchen give him another chance? Long Houchen tapped on Haoyue's back, and his whole body shot out like an arrow. Little Green spat out a small wind pillar, and attacked under Long Houchen's feet, causing his speed to instantly reach the limit. The earth wave spell was indeed ingenious. Huang Yi hurriedly controlled the earth wave under his feet to change direction. A white light flashed, and a powerful pulling force pulled Huang Yi up amidst his cry of alarm. The next moment, Long Houchen's blazing fire sword arrived in front of him. Saint Spiritual Stove Draw. Previously, when Long Houchen was within 20 meters of him, he wanted to use this skill, but was blocked by the sudden spike prison cage. How could he give him another chance now? Haoyue landed, and his thick and powerful four limbs suddenly kicked off, rushing in the direction where Long Houchen fell. Little Green opened its mouth, and a suction force pulled his body horizontally. Immediately afterward, it blew out a ball of wind, supporting Long Houchen to slowly land. When Huang Yi came to, 3 malevolent heads were already in front of him from 3 directions, breathing heavily. Little Fire even used its tongue to lick its mouth. It seemed to think he was very delicious. Don't. I admit defeat. Chapter 36. Don't. I admit defeat. Huang Yi cried out in alarm. The entire arena was shocked. This scene was too dramatic. No one could have imagined that Huang Yi, who had originally gained the upper hand, would be turned around by Long Houchen in such a short period of time. From Haoyue's appearance to the end of the match, only 10 breaths of time had passed, but Haoyue's strength was undoubtedly evident. Although it didn't use any powerful magic, its 3 heads and 3 attributes worked together extremely well. It was as if there were 3 magicians helping Long Houchen at the same time. The earth wave quietly disappeared, and the arena regained its calm. But Haoyue made a move. Its 3 heads and 6 eyes all focused on the earth elemental sprite on Huang Yi's shoulder. Greenie opened its mouth, and a powerful suction came from its mouth. The earth elemental sprite let out a shriek, and was sucked into its mouth in the next moment. No, Huang Yi cried out. His fear of Haoyue's 3 heads instantly turned into despair. The elemental spiritual stove was extremely important. Losing the earth elemental sprite was equivalent to his overall strength dropping by 40%. Greenie, don't spit it out. Long Houchen shouted in a low voice. Greenie looked at Long Houchen with some confusion, while Light and Fire swallowed their saliva. There was a reluctant look in their eyes, but they still nudged Greenie in a very human way. Greenie reluctantly opened its mouth, and with a poof, the earth elemental sprite smashed onto Huang Yi's body. Although this little thing was trembling from fright, and the elemental energy on its body was covered in saliva, Huang Yi was still overjoyed. He didn't hesitate to absorb it into his body, and the saliva was transferred to his clothes on his chest. Long Houchen hit Greenie's head with his hand in exasperation. You guys really want to eat everything? Brother Huang, sorry. Huang Yi shook his head. I should be the one thanking you. I lost. With that, he gratefully gave Long Houchen a magician's salute, and then turned to walk to the resting area. Long Houchen wins. Not to mention the other competitors, even the referee who had announced the victory could not help but lean over to size up the rare magical beast beside Long Houchen. It wasn't that there weren't magical beasts with 3 attributes, but it was extremely rare to see one with 3 heads. Furthermore, magical beasts that could possess 3 different attributes were usually at least of the 8th rank. The judge was a discerning person. He could tell that Long Houchen's magical beast companion was only at the beginning of the 6th tier. His aura wasn't too strong. Moreover, it seemed like it was already an adult. If the lizard could continue to grow, It would definitely help Long Houchen become a powerful knight with its innate gift of 3 magic attribute. Long Houchen did not stay for long. He sent Haoyue back to his hotel room through the contract. Magical beasts could be teleported to by themselves. Especially since Long Houchen and Haoyue had a blood contract, they could even set up multiple teleportation points. Everything should be fine today, right? I ended the competition so quickly. I have to wait for Kair first. Long Houchen was filled with guilt for making Kair wait and worry for him twice in a row. Therefore, after winning the competition, he could not wait to leave the training field. Today's battle had also established his position in the third group. Huang Yi was most likely his strongest opponent in the third group. After winning this battle, the rest of the competition would be much easier. On the other side, in the training field for the second group, Lin Xian sat in the resting area, watching the competition that was about to start worriedly. She was even more nervous than when she was competing in the competition herself. Both parties were walking towards the center of the field. One of them was the bald priest, Sima Xian, who had defeated Lin Xian the day before. On the other side, tuk tuk tuk. Amidst the familiar sound, Kair held her green bamboo staff and slowly walked into the training field. Sima Xian looked at Kair, who was slowly walking towards him, and could not help but frown. Yesterday, he had also seen the battle between Kair and Lin Xian. Kair chose to admit defeat immediately. At that time, he was very curious. How could this blind lady pass the preliminary round? Today, Kair was his opponent. Sima Xian vs. Kair match start. The referee announced and stepped back. 4 pillars that supported the assassins rose up as well. Sima Xian did not attack immediately. Instead, he looked at Kair and asked, "Miss, are you sure you can do it? Why don't you admit defeat? I don't like to fight with you girls anyway. I can't do it if you're like this." "I'm going to attack." Kair's cold voice sounded. In the next moment, Sima Xian suddenly felt goosebumps all over his body. His scalp felt like it was going to explode. A suffocating killing intent instantly filled the air. Kair was still Kair, the blind lady with the green bamboo staff. But at this moment, in Sima Xian's eyes, she had become an incomparably sharp blade. Kair's figure flashed, like a black lightning that suddenly appeared in the training field. Sima Xian only saw a blur before Kair appeared in front of him. The short end of the green bamboo staff was directly used as a dagger to point at his chest. Sima Xian's reaction was still very fast. When he saw a blur in front of him, he felt that something was wrong. His body quickly took a big step back, and at the same time, he relied on his intuition to erect his thick staff in front of him. Dang! Sima Xian only felt a strong force surging in an instant. There was also a dense chill that drilled into his palm through the staff. The strong penetrating force made his whole body cold. In the eyes of the other spectators, they only saw Kair rushing forward like a ghost. The green bamboo staff touched Sima Xian's staff, and Sima Xian's body had already slid backward. Fifth order, Sima Xian screamed in his heart. Without a fifth-order cultivation, how could her spiritual power be so strong? I can't let her get close to me. Sima Xian reacted correctly in the first moment. He stomped his right foot on the ground, and the holy light exploded. The white light turned into a circle of light and blasted towards the surroundings. Sure enough, his reaction was correct. Kair, who was like a maggot in a tarsal bone, paused slightly under the holy light explosion. Sima Xian waved the staff in his hand, and the hammer of holy light was instantly cast, smashing directly at Kair's head. At the same time, a strong golden light rose from his body. It was the holy light of the priest's protection. Roar! Sima Xian roared angrily. His body suddenly swelled, and the clothes on his upper body were torn apart. He instantly entered the state of berserk. If it was said that in the previous battle, his and Lin Xian's exchange of offense and defense was already shocking, then at this time, he actually used berserk, which made the other contestants' hearts twitch. This guy, is he really a priest? Sima Xian's response was not bad. Unfortunately, he was facing Kai Er. Kai Er's body swayed slightly. She pointed her green bamboo staff forward, and the hammer of holy light disappeared into thin air. It did not display its attack power at all. At the same time, Kai Er's body also became illusory. Sima Xian could not capture her figure at all. In the state of berserk, Sima Xian's attack frequency and strength were astonishing. He waved the staff in his hand rapidly and attacked Kai. However, a shocking scene appeared. In the face of such a tyrannical attack, Kai did not retreat. Instead, she actually rushed into the shadow of Sima Xian's staff. Poof, 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 poof. There were 4 consecutive sounds. 4 beams of green light hit the 4 positions of the holy light at the same time, and the holy light instantly collapsed. At this moment, Sima Xian felt a chill in his heart. Is she really a human and not a ghost? It clearly looked like it had hit her, but it did not feel like it had touched a physical body. At this moment, an ear-piercing scream sounded close to him. Sima Xian only felt pain in his ears, and his mind was momentarily in a trance. It was also at this moment that Kai who was already 2 meters away from him, pointed the green bamboo staff in her hand forward again. A faint green halo shone, and with a poof, it hit the tip of his staff. An unknown amount of power surged forth. Even though he was in the state of berserk, he was still in a trance. The iron palm rolled back and directly hit Sima Xian's thick chest muscles. Immediately after, the green bamboo staff in Kai Er's hand swept horizontally. With a poof, Sima Xian was sent flying 5 meters away and landed on the ground. A black shadow flashed, and the long end of the green bamboo staff was already on Sima Xian's throat. Crafty thrust, ghost flash, demonic toon brain, overlord stab. The 4 assassin skills were executed as smoothly as flowing water. And in the state of berserk, Sima Xian did not have the slightest bit of resistance. Kai Er's spiritual power was full of penetrating power. At this moment, Sima Xian, who was on the ground, could only use his own spiritual power to desperately neutralize Kai Er's spiritual power. There was no way he could resist. You've lost, Kai said lightly, and kept the green bamboo staff, slowly walking to the resting area. She did not even wait for the referee's confirmation. This was absolute confidence. In yesterday's competition, the other contestants who looked down on Kai because she admitted defeat to Lin Xian immediately all had strange expressions on their faces. Although Sima Xian did not have the cultivation of rank 5, he was already above rank 4 level 8. In the state of berserk, he could also fight against a rank 5 expert. However, in front of Kai he did not have the slightest chance. From the time Kai appeared until the end of the competition, the time was too short. But Kai powerful attack, which was as quiet as a virgin and as swift as a thunderbolt, shook the hearts of everyone present. One must know that from the beginning to the end, she did not rely on those pillars, and she was also a blind person. She really deserved the title of the number 1 assassin. Kai wins. At the same time as the referee announced, Sima Xian got up from the ground and touched his bald head. When he looked at Kai again, his gaze had changed a little, and he muttered, "So an assassin can be so strong." This battle had a great impact on Sima Xian, because this was the first time he did not have the ability to fight back against an opponent of the same age. In fact, the current Sima Xian was a bit like a light attribute berserker. The attack skills of a priest in the early stage were too limited. Although his physical strength was strong, how could he be compared to the super genius reincarnation saintess from the Assassin Temple? Lin Xian stared blankly at Kai as she returned to the rest area, his eyes staring blankly. What he wanted to say to Kai the most right now was to hug her thigh. Of course, he didn't have any other thoughts, he just wanted to hug her thigh. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that this little girl, who looked so delicate and had lost her sight when she was with Long Houchen, was actually so terrifyingly powerful. He had just experienced Sima Xian's combat strength yesterday. Too strong, simply too strong. Such a strong person, who in this year's Monster Hunters preliminaries could compete with her. Lin Xian's shock was no less than Lin Xian's. Lin Xian had not thought of it, she had not thought of it either. Moreover, in the match with her yesterday, Kai Er had deliberately admitted defeat. Even if she had rose, could she win against her? Brother, where did you find a little girl as perverted as you? In the past, Lin Xian had always thought that Long Houchen was the most talented person in the world, but this girl in front of her was probably not even as old as Long Houchen. Her cultivation had also reached the 5th rank. Looking at the way she dealt with Sima Xian with ease, it was obvious that she had not used her full strength. If she could really become her brother's little girlfriend, it would definitely be a great thing. Sister, I'll leave first. Kai came to Lin Xian's side and said softly. Lin Xian smiled and said, Are you going to wait for him? Yes. Go quickly. You are so strong, I don't have to worry about your safety. Lin Xian smiled. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Under everyone's gaze, Kai quietly left. In the next few days of the competition, Long Houchen could be said to have a smooth sailing in the 3rd group. He did not encounter any trouble. He did not even need Hao Yue to fight. He had won 5 times in a row. The 2 priests had directly admitted defeat when they faced him. They had seen very clearly when Long Houchen strangled the Earth Giant. How could they withstand that level of attack power? The other 3 victories were all contributed by the assassins. Everyone had 9 matches in the group stage, and Long Houchen had won 7 so far, basically guaranteeing his qualification to advance. In the last 2 days of the group stage, he would face 2 strange girls, Wang Yuanyuan and Chen Ying. In this group, Long Houchen and Huang Yi had displayed great strength, but the one who attracted the most attention was not them, but the summoner girl, Chen Ying. After losing 3 times in a row, she won 3 times in a row. Her fighting style was very simple, which was to summon the living soul gate. Just as Long Houchen had predicted, this girl had no way of knowing what she could summon. In the battle against Huang Yi, from her living soul gate, an advanced level 8 green dragon brazenly drilled out, frightening Huang Yi so much that he directly admitted defeat. From then on, this girl directly rose to become the most uncertain factor in the 3rd group. Who among these youths could contend against a level 8 magical beast? Wang Yuanyuan's performance was also very eye-catching. She unexpectedly obtained 7 victories like Long Houchen, but so far she had not yet encountered the strongest Long Houchen and Huang Yi. The last 2 rounds were against them. Therefore, Long Houchen had basically locked in one of the qualifying spots, and the other spot would be contested between Wang Yuanyuan and Huang Yi. Based on the current performance, although Huang Yi was behind by 2 rounds, the possibility of him catching up to Wang Yuanyuan's 7 victories was still very high. Moreover, as long as he defeated Wang Yuanyuan, based on the outcome of the battle, he would be able to surpass his opponent and advance together with Long Houchen. In the 3rd group, there was a strange random summoner. In the 2nd group, there was an even more strange one, and that was Lin Xian. After 7 rounds, Lin Xian lost 1 and drew 6. That's right, other than losing against the bald priest, Sima Xian, due to a time problem, he had drawn with his opponents in the next 6 rounds. This was because, although he did not know how to attack, no one could break his defense. Even Lin Xian, who had the rose unicorn, was the same. Unfortunately, the 8th day of the competition was about to begin, and his opponent today was Kai Er. Kai Er outshone the others in the 2nd group, winning 6 out of 7 battles and losing 1. Lin Xian also relied on the strength of the rose unicorn to obtain 5 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss. The one she lost was to the summoner from the Soul Temple. However, the next day, when the summoner faced Kai Er, he was seriously injured by Kai Er, causing him to lose several matches in a row. Because of this, the Soul Temple even protested to the Assassin Temple. However, was it of any use? The bald priest, Sima Xian, became the third in this group, winning 5 out of 7 battles and losing 2. The other was lost to Lin Xian. The advantage of the Rose Unicorn was indeed too great. In addition, Lin Xian was a punishment knight, and after many battles with the evolved Rose Unicorn, their coordination was getting better and better. In the last 2 rounds of this group, Kair would face Lin Xian, a magician who did not know how to attack, and a warrior. Basically, she would team up with Lin Xian to advance to the next round. Lin Xian knew very well that if it were not for Kair, she might not have been able to advance to the next round. She liked this little girl, who helped her family but not reason, more and more. In the past 5 days, Long Haochen did not cause any trouble. He traveled with Kair every day. After all, they were still too young. To them, holding hands and traveling together for a while was already a very happy thing. They did not talk much between them, but they were familiar with each other's aura. Lin Xian did not tell Long Haochen about the strength of Kair. This was a matter between a young couple, and she would let him discover it himself. Long Haochen also did not ask. Because Kair admitted defeat to Lin Xian on the first day of the competition, Long Haochen first thought that Kair's blindness caused her to be unable to fight, and he felt even more pity for her. On the 8th day of the group competition, early morning, while eating breakfast, Lin Xian teased Long Haochen, "Little brother, you send Kair back every day. Where did you take her to play?" Yi Hua, who was also eating, also looked towards Long Haochen. Lin Xian naturally would not hide the fact that Long Haochen knew Kair. She also told him about the situation of Kair's strength. Yi Hua naturally would not object to his precious disciple knowing this future star of the Assassin Temple. A blind girl was actually so strong. This in itself was an anomaly. What's more, Yi Hua's innately weak internal spiritual energy caused him to naturally sympathize with Kair as they were in the same boat. Although he did not think that it was a good thing for Long Haochen to find a girlfriend so early, something that happened yesterday made him change his mind. "Play? I am sending her back," Long Haochen said. Lin Xian immediately widened her eyes. "No way, little brother. Is this how you date girls? This is too unromantic. Even if you can't take her to play because of the competition schedule, you should at least treat her to a meal or something. Communicate more and get familiar with her family situation or something. Treat her to a meal." Long Haochen was dazed. "But I don't have money." He really didn't have money. That bit of money he had was all used to fill Haoyue's stomach. After Haoyue evolved, his appetite became bigger. He really broke a gold coin in half to spend it. Lin Xian slapped her forehead and said with a speechless expression, "You silly little brother, if you don't have money, why don't you ask your big sister? So stupid. Here." As she spoke, she took out a bag of gold coins and threw it to Long Haochen. "Big sister, I can't take your money." Long Haochen hurriedly wanted to return the bag of gold coins. Lin Xian glared at him. "What? Are you looking for a beating? Quickly keep it. Isn't it right for a little brother to spend his big sister's money? I have always treated you as my own little brother. Don't you see me as your real big sister? If you dare to return it, big sister will get angry and ignore you in the future." Long Haochen suddenly didn't know what to say. Yi Hua said, "Just keep it. Xian Heir is doing this for your own good. That Miss Kair, you have to treat her a bit better. If possible, when the finals are over and the monster hunters choose their members, try to be in the same group as her." Just yesterday, a certain mysterious old man found Yi Hua and had a secret talk with him for more than 2 hours. After the old man left, Yi Hua was immersed in the feeling of not knowing whether to laugh or cry for a long time. Because this important person from Knights Templars came to find him and actually told him to try to matchmake Long Haochen and Kair as much as possible. Although he didn't say it explicitly, his meaning was expressed. That is, Kai Er has an extraordinary significance to the Assassin Temple. If Long Houchen could really be together with her, it would be very beneficial to the friendship between Knights Templars and the Assassin Temple. The two of them could also help each other. However, with Yi Hua's personality, he naturally wouldn't really be a matchmaker for his disciple. Today, he mentioned this to subtly express that he doesn't oppose Long Houchen and Kai Er being together. After keeping the gold coins, Long Houchen suddenly felt a bit more ashamed. That's right. I've known Kai Er for so long, but I haven't even treated her to a meal before. Magic Trial Field, the second group's competition venue. According to the draw, the first person to fight in the second group today is Kai Er, and her opponent is impressively Lin Xian. Kai Er versus Lin Xian, both parties enter the arena. The referee loudly shouted in the trial field. Kai Er slowly stood up. Just as she was about to walk out, Lin Xian already stood up and shouted, "I admit defeat, I admit defeat." This is the first time since the start of the second group that someone admitted defeat before even entering the arena. Lin Xian smiled at Kai Er. Although he knew that Kai Er couldn't see it, he still waved his hand. To him, no matter what, he won't be able to enter the top 16. Since that's the case, he might as well be a good person. Give Kai Er a favor. Not to mention, he doesn't think that he can block Kai Er's attack. Although Lin Xian doesn't know offensive magic, it doesn't mean that he isn't smart. On the contrary, he is an extremely smart person. What is Kai Er's profession? She is an assassin. Does an assassin use a green bamboo cane as a weapon? Definitely not. From the start of the competition until now, Kai Er has never used her real assassin's weapon. If she really uses it, who knows how strong her attack power will be. He doesn't want to be the first test subject just because his defense is strong enough. In the third group, Long Houchen is also the first to fight today. However, he doesn't have it as easy as Kai Er. Wang Yuanyuan stood opposite Long Houchen, her right hand holding the heavy shield that is many times larger than her body. She looked at Long Houchen with eyes full of excitement. She knows that if she can win this round, the first place in the second group will be hers. Although the top 16 will have to draw lots for the finals, the first place in the group will only meet the second place in the other group. Being the first place is obviously very advantageous for her. However, she also knows that this guy in front of her is not easy to deal with. Although the mount that Long Houchen released when he defeated Huang Yi was just a flash in the pan, it left a very deep impression on her. Match start. The referee announced and slowly retreated. Wang Yuanyuan held the shield in front of her and shouted at Long Houchen, "Summon it. Get that mount of yours out." Long Houchen shook his head and said, "That's not fair. If you are really stronger than me, I will consider it." Although he hopes to increase his combat experience through this competition, he will not be inflexible. Long Houchen didn't expect his cultivation to break through to rank 5 in the competition. Now, not only did he break through, but Hao Yue also completed his second evolution. This really gives him the strength to fight for the top 3 in the finals. That is the reward of a spiritual stove. Moreover, he has not fulfilled his promise to Lin Xian. It would be best if he can complete it in this Monster Hunters competition. Long Houchen doesn't like the feeling of being indebted to others. Hearing his words, Wang Yuanyuan couldn't help but be slightly startled. She slowly put away the gemstone in her left hand and nodded to Long Houchen, saying, "If that's the case, then let's have a fair fight." As she spoke, she let out a roar and instantly rushed towards Long Houchen. Her speed was not comparable to an assassin's, but with every step she took, there would be a bang. Her own aura would also soar. Silver spiritual power rose, covering the surface of her skin with a layer of silver light. Rank 5? Liquid spiritual energy. Long Houchen's heart skipped a beat. In the previous competitions, Wang Yuanyuan only showed the peak of rank 4 cultivation. This is the first time she showed the strength of a rank 5. He didn't know if she hid her strength before or if she just had a breakthrough. Just as a powerful person in the warrior temple commented, Wang Yuanyuan is not a traditional shield warrior. Her huge shield is completely used as a heavy axe. When she was less than 10 meters away from Long Haochen, she stomped her left foot on the ground and jumped into the air. She raised the huge shield and went straight for Long Haochen's head. That ferocious look is not the slightest bit like a girl. She is even more ferocious than a male warrior. Long Haochen held a fine iron shield in his left hand and a fire sword in his right hand. The fine iron shield is cheap. After losing the brilliant shield, he also went to the Sanctuary Alliance auction house to take a look. However, first of all, his own gold coins have to feed Haoyue in the future. Secondly, good weapons are too expensive. They are so expensive that he came back after a few glances. A shield of ordinary magic equipment costs thousands of gold coins. Even an alloy shield costs more than 100 gold coins. With no other choice, Long Haochen could only spend 10 gold coins to buy the fine iron shield in his hand and use it for now. He also spent 20 gold coins to buy a heavy sword, which he kept in the forget-me-not ring as a backup. Now, he just wanted to wait until the end of the finals to quickly go to the Knights Templars to collect the prize for the preliminary round. It seems that the top 10 will get a piece of magic equipment. If I sell this thing, it should be enough to get me a set of magic equipment. Really, a hero is stumped by 1 gold coin. Long Haochen is proud. He will definitely not ask his sister and teacher for money to spend. Assault. Facing Wang Yuanyuan, who jumped into the air and slashed at him, Long Haochen used the assault skill. Of course, he did not rush at Wang Yuanyuan, but to the side. With a sudden increase in speed, he dodged Wang Yuanyuan's attack. Boom! The huge shield slammed into the ground, and the silver spiritual power instantly spread, creating a distorted shock wave. Nearly half of the shield in Wang Yuanyuan's hand was submerged into the ground. The power of this attack was comparable to the light slash sword that Long Haochen used, the holy sword. Although Long Haochen dodged Wang Yuanyuan's attack, the silver spiritual power still affected him to a certain extent, so he could not attack immediately after his assault skill was interrupted. Wang Yuanyuan's face did not change when her attack missed. She suddenly swung the shield in Long Haochen's direction. Suddenly, a large piece of yellow soil turned into thousands of flying sand, straight at Long Haochen. Wang Yuanyuan shook her wrist, and the huge shield flew out, straight at Long Haochen. The sound of the heavy shield breaking through the air was as shocking as the sigh of the god of death. Long Haochen's upper body fell backwards, as if his waist had been broken. Wang Yuanyuan's giant shield whizzed past his head in an instant with a whistling sound. At this moment, Long Haochen's right foot touched the ground, and he counterattacked. At this time, Wang Yuanyuan's shield was not in her hand, so it was the best time to attack her. The shield blocked the attack, and Long Haochen's fine iron shield went straight at Wang Yuanyuan. At this time, Wang Yuanyuan's huge shield would need at least a breath's time to turn around. Humph! Wang Yuanyuan snorted coldly, and with a flash of silver light, she unexpectedly rushed at Long Haochen without hesitation. What surprised Long Haochen was that in the next instant, the huge shield had already appeared in her hand without warning. The situation had turned into a situation where both sides collided with each other. Bang! Long Haochen flew 5 meters away, and under the huge impact, the fine iron shield in his hand had already broken into pieces. He was really at a disadvantage in terms of equipment. Also, Long Haochen was shocked to find that even with his external spiritual energy enhanced by Haoyue's bloodline, he could not gain any advantage against Wang Yuanyuan. In fact, he was even at a disadvantage. This girl is so strong. Because he had a date with Kair every day, Long Haochen did not carefully observe Wang Yuanyuan's battle situation. At this time, He finally understood that this girl was able to win 7 battles because of her real ability. That silver spiritual energy, could it be a rare spatial attribute? In an instant, Long Houchen came to a realization. If it was not a spatial attribute, how could the huge shield suddenly return to her hand? After pushing back Long Houchen, Wang Yuanyuan was also stunned. Their internal spiritual energy was about the same. When the same skills collided with each other, it was a competition of external spiritual energy and equipment. Without a doubt, Long Houchen's fine iron shield was at an absolute disadvantage. However, at the moment of the collision, Wang Yuanyuan felt that Long Houchen was like a lion that had suddenly erupted. His explosive power was so fierce that she was pushed back half a step, unable to connect her skills. If he had the same equipment as her, even if he could not win, he would not be sent flying, right? Although this was what she thought, her hands did not stop. He rushed toward Long Houchen, who was unsteady. The shield in her hand shook, and 3 rays of light appeared, covering Long Houchen's body. Although Long Houchen only had a single sword in his hand, the light in his eyes suddenly became sharp. After the previous test, he had some understanding of Wang Yuanyuan. At this time, he no longer held back. With a sudden thrust, the fire sword flashed with a dazzling light, and with a poof, it stabbed the edge of Wang Yuanyuan's heavy shield. At the same time, he muttered an incantation, holding the sword with both hands, and after the sudden thrust, he immediately used a glorious sun slash. Boom! The glorious sun slash accurately caught the real one of the 3 shield shadows, and there was a violent collision. This time, it was Wang Yuanyuan who was at a disadvantage. Both of their internal spiritual energy levels were about the same, but her attack just now had dispersed the power. However, the quality of her giant shield was clearly higher than the fire sword, and she was only pushed back a step. However, this blow also sounded the horn of Long Houchen's counterattack. He raised his left hand, and the fine iron heavy sword that he had bought appeared in his grasp. At the same time, he finished chanting the incantation. A light about a meter tall quietly floated behind him, its wings spread out, impressively in the shape of a radiant angel. A circle of golden light scattered from the angel's body, landing on Long Houchen's body. In an instant, his entire body was dyed with a layer of gold. Rank 5 Guardian Knight skill, Angel's Blessing. This skill was taught to Long Houchen by Yi Hua in the past few days after his cultivation broke through to the rank 5 Guardian. Angel's Blessing was not a secret skill, and all Guardian Knight had to learn it. This skill was extremely useful in a real battle because it was an area of effect skill, and not only could it buff the user, but it could also buff the teammates. Under the situation where spiritual energy was continuously consumed, all attacks and defense would be imbued with the light attribute, and it would not affect the original attribute. Although the light attribute buff was far from the Holy Sword, it was superior in terms of endurance and area of effect. This was one of the essential skills for the Guardian Knight to lead the team to fight against the demons. The fire sword and fine iron heavy sword in Long Houchen's hands were both covered with a thick golden light. Apart from increasing his own attack power, using Angel's Blessing was more important for him to protect his weapons. If the fire sword was damaged again, how would he be able to participate in the later matches? With the buff from Angel's Blessing, the fine iron heavy sword could barely be considered as a magic weapon. Pure white blade, lightning stab. The heavy swords in both hands burst forth at the same time, and dozens of sword flashes pierced towards Wang Yuanyuan with incomparable sharpness. Wang Yuanyuan didn't expect Long Houchen to switch to 2 swords after his shield was damaged. Unprepared, she could only take a step back and put the giant shield in front of her, completely blocking her body. Chapter 37. This was the effect that Long Houchen wanted. With a tap of his left foot, he leapt into the air. Amidst a series of metallic clangs, the fire sword completed its lightning thrust, and in the next instant, the glorious sun slash flashed once more. It fiercely slammed into the heavy shield, and his leaping body also borrowed this attack to rise above Wang Yuanyuan's head. Not good. Wang Yuanyuan also reacted at this time. Her heavy shield was most suitable for medium to short-range attacks, but it was not suitable for close combat. She was not good at defense, so when Long Haochen closed in like this, his rhythm was clearly broken. Long Haochen's glorious sun slash was heavy and powerful, forcing her to take another step back. At this time, Long Haochen's battle-killing revolving sword had already erupted. Wang Yuanyuan was able to stand out among the many warriors, so this was not the only skill. This girl's eyes flashed with a hint of wildness. At this time, she did not rely on the advantage of her giant shield to passively defend. She suddenly raised the shield, and instead of holding it with one hand, she used the tip of her feet to point her feet on the ground, and her whole body was like a giant spinning top. An intense silver light also instantly dyed the giant shield in her hands. Rotating shield splitting strike. The silver light rippled, and Long Haochen was shocked to find that when his battle-killing revolving sword landed on the rapidly rotating giant shield that was emitting intense silver light, his attacks actually kept slipping away. Not only was he unable to display the full power of the battle-killing revolving sword, he was also unable to completely borrow strength. This caused the power of his secret skill to be greatly reduced. But the giant shield was as solid as a boulder, not moving in the slightest, nor did it show any signs of being damaged. A trace of envy appeared in Long Haochen's heart. Although this shield was a little big, the quality was really good. The scene in front of him was absolutely gorgeous. Long Haochen and Wang Yuanyuan, one spinning horizontally in the air, the other spinning vertically on the ground to resist. Gold and silver spiritual energy wildly exploded, colliding with each other. The powerful explosive force forced the referee to move closer to them. He was ready to intervene at any moment to prevent either of them from getting hurt. As Long Haochen spun, layers of halos erupted from his body. While using the battle-killing spiral sword, he was able to continuously release the conviction halo and trusty halo, increasing his attack power. Just how strong was his mental strength to do that? Wang Yuanyuan seemed to have completely blocked Long Haochen's attack. Her shield was not damaged in the slightest. However, the continuous pressure caused her spinning feet to gradually sink into the ground, like a spinning top gradually drilling into the ground. Ah! Wang Yuanyuan suddenly let out an ear-piercing shriek. The rapidly rotating shield in her hand suddenly blasted out a huge silver beam of light over a meter in diameter. Long Haochen was caught off guard, and the battle-killing revolving sword clashed fiercely with it, sending him flying high into the air. The silver beam of light contained an extremely powerful tearing force. Fortunately, he had the support skill of Angel's Blessing. Coupled with the fact that he had released a spirit light barrier in time, he was not truly injured. Poof! When his feet hit the ground, Long Haochen took 4 or 5 steps back before he could barely stabilize himself. On the other side, Wang Yuanyuan had just jumped out of the hole she had dug. Skysplitter, a powerful spatial attribute warrior's secret technique. It had an instant and tyrannical explosive force. However, Wang Yuanyuan was in an extremely passive situation and was unable to fully display the power of this attack. Even so, she relied on this attack and Skysplitter to break Long Haochen's battle-killing spiral sword. However, at this moment, Wang Yuanyuan's situation did not look too good. Her beautiful face, full of heroic spirit, was clearly somewhat pale. Her small chest that had just developed constantly heaved up and down as she panted. Using 2 of her most powerful skills consecutively consumed a lot of her spiritual power. In terms of consumption, Long Haochen, who had the constitution of the Child of Light, was much better than her. This was clear from the fact that he still maintained Angel's Blessing. "You're the punishment knight?" Wang Yuanyuan looked at Long Haochen with a puzzled expression. Long Haochen shook his head slightly. I know a bit of both protection and punishment skills. Wang Yuanyuan panted slightly. It seems that I really am not your match in a normal fight. However, I won't admit defeat just like this. I'm going to use my full strength. You should also summon your mount. With your trash equipment, you can't compete with my divine soul shield. She knew her own strength. Although it seemed that she was not at a disadvantage, the series of collisions just now had consumed more than half of her spiritual energy. On the other hand, Long Haochen did not seem to have consumed much of his spiritual energy. The most overbearing aspect of his battle-killing spiral sword was that it borrowed strength to attack, which consumed very little spiritual energy. On the other hand, her two main offensive skills consumed a lot of spiritual energy. As she spoke, she flipped her left hand, and suddenly a large gem appeared in her hand. The intense silver light of her spatial spiritual energy dyed the hand holding the gem a brilliant silver. Without hesitation, she directly inserted the gem into the first of the 9 holes on the shield. Then, she quickly took out 2 more gems and inserted them into the second and third holes on the shield. These gems all looked the same. Their entire bodies were pale gold, but it was not the gold of the light attribute. Instead, it was a pure gold with a red halo. When the first gem was inserted, the huge shield began to emit a boundless majesty and arrogance. A pure gold halo spread out. The majesty was high and mighty, like a ruler of a generation. Moreover, its aura was so dense, containing the glory of countless years of history. On the rostrum in the distance, the 6 experts from the 6 great temples, who were in charge of supervising the competition, stood up at almost the same time. Their eyes were filled with shock. Long Haochen definitely did not know what it was, but how could they not know? This aura clearly belonged to the powerful weapons and equipment from the glorious era from 6,000 to 13,000 years ago. Judging from the aura, the current aura emitted by the shield had already reached the peak of glorious grade equipment. It was only a step away from legendary grade equipment. At this moment, Wang Yuanyuan had only embedded 3 gems on it. What if she had all 9 gems? Would this huge shield surpass legendary grade and reach the level of epic grade equipment? With the embedding of the 3 gems, a strange face gradually appeared on the huge shield. The face was very ferocious. Under the cover of the pure gold halo, it was composed of 5 colors: red, yellow, white, blue, and gray. The powerful pressure was emitted from the face. Long Haochen, who was in front of it, felt that the aura was like a tangible object that kept attacking his body. Wang Yuanyuan held the huge shield and slowly raised it. Immediately, the pure gold light also dyed her body. Wang Yuanyuan did not have any armor on her. As soon as she was dyed by the pure gold light, both her clothes and her skin rippled with a strange luster. An almost barbaric aura erupted from her body. Long Haochen's perception was far beyond that of ordinary people. He could clearly feel that the current Wang Yuanyuan contained an extremely strong explosive spiritual power. It was as if she could launch a fatal attack at any time. Purple light flashed on his forehead. 9 purple light patterns coiled and shone. There was no need for an incantation. Long Haochen pointed forward with his right hand. The purple light patterns on his forehead expanded. With a flash of light, Haoyue appeared in front of him out of thin air. Seeing the 3 Haoyue, Wang Yuanyuan's eyes immediately lit up. She knew that this was Long Haochen in his full state. And at this moment she was also in her strongest state. It was not that she did not want to embed a few more gems on it, but because she only had 3 of these ancestral gems. I am the descendant of the mighty miracle god. This mighty miracle god shield is a bloodline weapon passed down by my ancestor since the glorious era. Although I can't use it to its full strength now, my mighty miracle god shield is infinitely close to legendary grade equipment. Be careful. As soon as she finished speaking, Wang Yuanyuan's right foot stomped heavily on the ground. With a loud bang, the entire training field shook violently. Her entire body was like a ball of pure gold flames, flying straight towards Long Houchen. The so-called bloodline weapon referred to a special weapon that only the direct bloodline relatives of the first person to possess this weapon could inherit. No matter how strong or weak this kind of weapon was, it did not have much value on the market. After all, no matter how good an item was, if it could not be used, it could only be a decoration. It could be clearly seen that the ground that Wang Yuanyuan's foot had just stomped on had a diameter of 5 feet and a depth of more than a meter. It could be seen how much strength she had used to stomp on the ground. Facing the powerful pressure from the mighty miracle god shield, Haoyue acted as if it did not feel anything. It raised its 3 heads and let out a roar at the same time. Long Houchen and Haoyue were telepathically connected. His figure flashed, and he landed on Haoyue's back. Under the effect of the angel's blessing, Haoyue's body was also covered with a faint layer of golden light. With a wave of the fire sword in his right hand, a sword of light slashed towards Wang Yuanyuan. Haoyue's 4-meter-long body was extremely nimble. Little Greenie spat out a green stream of air and used the levitation technique to reduce its weight. It made a horizontal jumping motion. Carrying Long Houchen, it moved 2 feet to the side. The mighty miracle god shield in Wang Yuanyuan's hands came out horizontally. When it collided with the sword of light, a strange scene appeared. The sword of light shattered in an instant, turning into specks of golden light that disappeared into the air. At the moment of contact, Long Houchen could clearly feel that the mighty miracle god's shield was violently shaking at an astonishing speed that was hard to see with the naked eye. The sword of light had been directly shattered by it. Wang Yuanyuan's toes touched the ground, and it chased after Haoyue's heavy shield and slashed down. Haoyue's 3 heads started chanting when its body moved horizontally. Seeing that Wang Yuanyuan's attack was about to reach, 3 layers of light simultaneously spread out from Haoyue's body. It was actually 3 elemental shields. The green was wind, the red was fire, and the gold was light. The 3 elemental shields were also imbued with the light attribute of the angel's blessing. Long Houchen's 2 swords blocked. His body instantly froze, and he used divine defense to block. Although Wang Yuanyuan's speed was fast, Haoyue was not unable to dodge. However, Long Houchen still chose to meet force with force. He wanted to test the extent of the mighty miracle god shield's attack power. Boom! Boom! Dang! 4 consecutive explosions shook the entire audience. The 3 elemental shields were actually able to stop the mighty miracle god shield's sharpness for 3 seconds before shattering one after another. In the end, it still fiercely collided with the 2 swords that Long Houchen had crossed above his head. Long Houchen's entire body shook. A layer of golden light also lit up on his body. It was light's vengeance. Haoyue, who was below him, took a few steps back, leaving a deep footprint on the ground. The fine iron heavy sword was completely shattered. Although the fire sword was not broken, it was bent in the middle. From the looks of it, it was not very useful anymore. Moreover, at this time, Long Houchen's arms were already sore and numb. The blood in his body was in turmoil, and he was almost injured. It could be said that he and Haoyue's combined strength could barely block this attack. Too strong. This strength was probably at least a few thousand jin of power. In this collision, Long Houchen had undoubtedly suffered a huge loss. However, this loss was not for nothing. Through this direct collision, he had already gained some understanding of the mighty miracle god shield in Wang Yuanyuan's hands. First of all, that rapid vibration should be a skill that came with the mighty miracle god shield. Without this skill, it would not be so easy to break through the 3 elemental shield. Secondly, the shield's greatest power lay in its strength. It seemed to be able to directly increase Wang Yuanyuan's external spiritual power, and its body was extremely heavy. This was why it could produce such power. However, it seemed that it was not easy for Wang Yuanyuan to control this shield. At the moment of the collision, her face clearly flushed red. Moreover, after the shield repelled Long Houchen, Her huge shield had directly smashed into the ground. More than half of the shield was submerged in the ground. She was currently using all her strength to pull it out, and it was far from the ease she had before. Obviously, with her cultivation, it was not easy for her to control this shield. At this time, the knight's advantage was displayed. Indeed, Long Houchen's arms were numb from the vibration, and his weapon was damaged. However, Hao Yue was not directly injured. Moreover, when Long Houchen used Divine Block to block the mighty Miracle God Shield, Hao Yue's body straightened, helping Long Houchen to dissolve a part of the power. After taking a few steps back, Hao Yue took advantage of the opportunity when Wang Yuanyuan was pulling out the shield from the ground, and rushed to Wang Yuanyuan's side. The thick tail swept towards Wang Yuanyuan's legs, and at the same time, a large number of fireballs and wind blades crazily bombarded Wang Yuanyuan, especially the hands that were holding the shield. Little Light chanted an incantation, and the spirit-replenishing technique, Brilliant World, was released again, replenishing Long Houchen's consumption. Wang Yuanyuan's consumption was indeed not small. This was not the first time she used the mighty Miracle God Shield, but she had forgotten that when she used the mighty Miracle God Shield in the past, her internal spiritual energy was always very abundant. But the series of collisions with Long Houchen had consumed a lot of her energy. And just now, when she used the mighty Miracle God Shield to attack with all her strength, she discovered that she could not completely control the mighty Miracle God Shield without the support of her internal spiritual energy. And Hao Yue's follow-up attacks were really too fast. So much so that she was thrown into confusion. Pulling the mighty Miracle God Shield horizontally, Wang Yuanyuan tried to hide behind the shield. With the power of the mighty Miracle God Shield, these ordinary magic spells could not withstand it. And she really did it. A large number of Little Fire and Little Green's magic spells were all annihilated under the high-frequency vibration of the mighty Miracle God Shield. However, Hao Yue was extremely cunning. The magic it instantly released was only to confuse Wang Yuanyuan, while the big tail below wrapped around one of Wang Yuanyuan's legs in time, and suddenly pulled back. Although Wang Yuanyuan's strength was greatly increased by the mighty Miracle God Shield's amplification, Hao Yue's strength was also not small, not to mention that it was pulling with all its strength and panicking. This time, the effect was clearly shown. Wang Yuanyuan's body was extremely flexible. With this pull, her whole body immediately fell down, making a very flexible split movement. She still wanted to pull the shield over to chop Hao Yue's tail. However, Long Houchen did not give her this opportunity. At the same time as Hao Yue launched, Long Houchen received the support of Little Light's dazzling heaven and earth skill. At the same time, his spiritual power was rapidly restored, and the numbness in his arms was also alleviated. Those magic spells released by Little Fire and Little Green were not only to conceal their tail attacks, but also to conceal Long Houchen's rising figure. Puff! Long Houchen, who flashed behind Wang Yuanyuan, cut Wang Yuanyuan's neck with a palm knife. Wang Yuanyuan only felt her vision go black, and then she fainted. Her mighty Miracle God Shield naturally could not be pulled over. Long Houchen supported the fainted Wang Yuanyuan, and looked at the giant shield next to him with lingering fear. He knew that if Wang Yuanyuan's control over the shield was just a little stronger, he would have been the one to lose. He could not let Hao Yue fight to the death with this shield. However, an inanimate object was, in the end, an inanimate object. Although the mighty Miracle God Shield's power was close to that of a legendary equipment, it still needed someone to control it. And Hao Yue's help to Long Houchen was much greater. Compared to an equality contract, the advantages of a blood contract were becoming more and more obvious. The spiritual connection between them was much closer, even if it was just a thought, they could feel each other, and their cooperation in battle was also more tacit. Although he won against Wang Yuanyuan, Long Houchen's expression was not very good. In this competition, all his equipment had been destroyed. Not a single one was left. The high-intensity competition and the terror of the mighty miracle god shield just now told Long Houchen the role of powerful equipment in battle. But he had no money. How could he buy equipment? After entering the elimination round, without any suitable equipment, how could he face the other strong people in the other groups? Haoyue had evolved into a three-headed beast, and Long Houchen himself had broken through to the fifth order. Right now, he was very confident that he could fight for the top 3 in this competition. Long Houchen wins. Long Houchen shone a holy barrier on Wang Yuanyuan's body. He did not use too much force, and after a few breaths, Wang Yuanyuan had already woken up from unconsciousness. She leapt up, looked at Long Houchen with an unconvinced expression, and snorted, saying, "If I had used the mighty miracle god shield from the start, you might not have been my opponent." As she said that, she removed the 3 gems from the shield. Long Houchen nodded seriously, saying, "You're right. However, the outcome of this battle is not yet known. From the looks of it, you don't seem to have full control over this equipment. It also consumes a lot of your energy. As long as I can persevere for a period of time, it will be very difficult for you to win." Wang Yuanyuan knew that he was speaking the truth, and nodded to him, saying, "You're not bad. I will definitely enter the finals with you." As she said that, this valiant lady carried her giant shield, and walked towards the resting area, looking directly at a certain mage who was resting. Huang Yi's expression was a little ugly at this moment. His last opponent was Wang Yuanyuan, and whoever won would advance as second place, although third place also had a chance of advancing. Who wouldn't want to control their own fate in their own hands? He had also seen Wang Yuanyuan's valiant performance just now. Huang Yi thought indignantly, "Can you not be so fierce?" Even a radiance-grade equipment appeared, and the most powerful kind at that. "Can I handle it?" The power of that giant shield was enough to offset his spiritual stove advantage. After all, his earth elemental spirit had never evolved. After this battle, Long Houchen had officially advanced to the next round. Moreover, he had advanced to the next round as the first in his group and was the first to enter the top 16. After teleporting Haoyue back to the hotel room, Long Houchen walked out of the trial ground sullenly. What should I do without a weapon? However, the depression in his heart soon disappeared. "Kai, you're early again today." Long Houchen greeted her with a smile. Whenever he saw her, he would forget all his unhappiness. Although Kai still wore a veil after that time and did not let him see her face again, Long Houchen never asked to see it again. He walked a few steps forward and came to Kai's side. Long Houchen naturally held her little hand. Hearing his voice, the lines on Kai's eyebrows softened, and she asked softly, "How was today's match?" Long Houchen chuckled and said, "It's all right. Today's opponent was quite strong. It was a female warrior. Her shield was very powerful. She used the shield as an attack weapon and could also install gems to enhance its power. She said that she was a descendant of the mighty spirit god." Long Houchen had learned a lot from the battle just now. He excitedly recounted the process of his battle with Wang Yuanyuan. However, he did not mention the damage to his weapon. It was not because of anything else, but because he did not want Kai to worry about him. "It's good that you won. In that case, you're already first in your group." Kai smiled. Long Houchen nodded and said, "That's right. I just don't know what other strong opponents I will encounter in the elimination round. By the way, we've known each other for so long. Apart from sending you back, we haven't done anything else. How about..." Speaking till here, he paused for a moment and stopped holding Kai's hand. He moved slightly closer to look at the expression on Kai's face. If Kai was in a hurry to go home, he did not intend to invite her to dinner. However, Kai misunderstood. With a whoosh, her face that was not covered by the veil turned red, and her heartbeat suddenly accelerated. As an assassin, she had never felt as panicked as she was at this moment. Although they were both young, Girls were always more mature than boys when it came to matters between men and women. What does he want to do? Does he want to look at my face? Or does he want to hug me? Or Kai-er's heart was already in a mess. Her little hand that was held by Long Houchen suddenly became sweaty. Long Houchen saw the sudden change in her expression and was also shocked. He hurriedly stretched out his hand to touch her forehead. Kai-er could not see it. Under the situation where her mind was in a mess, her perception of the outside world had also become a lot blurrier. Just as Long Houchen's palm touched her forehead, she subconsciously dodged backwards and cried out in alarm, "Ah, don't!" After all, she was not ready. Not far behind her, there was a small stone step. She retreated in panic and immediately tripped her feet, causing her whole body to fall backward. Long Houchen was shocked. Although he did not understand what happened to Kai-er, he still subconsciously took a step forward and hugged her slender waist, supporting her delicate body. "Be careful." At this moment, Kai-er was so embarrassed that even her neck was red. She could clearly feel the heat from Long Houchen's palm that was hugging her waist, as well as his aura that instantly approached her. As an assassin, especially since she had been practicing since she was a child, her body was extremely sensitive, because only in this way could she sense any subtle danger. But at this moment, her body slightly softened, and her legs almost lost their balance. One hand grabbed the lapel of Long Houchen's clothes, and her mind was a little blank. At this moment, Long Houchen was also a little dazed. At this time, the weather was not cold, and everyone was not wearing much clothes. When he hugged Kai-er's slender and soft waist, he only felt that his palm was as smooth as cream and as warm as beautiful jade. Especially when he felt that slender waist that seemed to be about to break, and the attractive curve between the suddenly raised perky buttocks, his handsome face also blushed with shame. Just a few seconds, but to them it was as long as a few centuries. It was still Kai-er who reacted first. She straightened her back and hurriedly stood up, holding the green bamboo stick in her hand to block Long Houchen. She angrily said, You Long Houchen said in a daze, "Kai-er, are you okay? I just wanted to invite you to dinner. What's wrong with you? Are you sick? Do you have a fever? Your face is so red." This time, it was Kai-er's turn to be dazed. So he was just. I actually thought wrongly. Not only did the blush on her face not fade, but it also became a little more intense. Kai-er lightly tapped Long Houchen with the green bamboo stick, and said in a low voice, "Scoundrel. I'll go back first. Who wants to eat with you?" With that, she tapped the ground with the green bamboo stick, and Long Houchen only saw her figure flash, and in a few flashes, she disappeared without a trace. What a fast movement technique! An assassin's speed is really enviable. But what's wrong with Kai-er? Why did she call me scoundrel? Long Houchen stood there for a moment, and then returned to the hotel with some confusion. His perception was sharp, and he could feel that Kai-er wasn't really angry with him. But he didn't understand why she left as if she was running away. But the feeling of catching her just now was really good. Hugging her waist was really very comfortable. Today, he was a little reluctant to wash his hands. Long Houchen returned to the hotel, and before he entered the room, he heard Yi Hua's voice from the room next door. "Long Houchen, come here. How did teacher know that I'm back?" Long Houchen's heart moved, and he hurriedly went to Yi Hua's room and pushed the door open. In Yi Hua's room, he wasn't the only person. Other than him, there were two other people. An old man with white hair and beard sat opposite him, and behind the old man stood a young man. This young man recognized him. Wasn't he Han Yu who recognized me as his master that day? Although Yi Hua was sitting there, he seemed very respectful, and only half of his butt was sitting on the chair. This was the first time that Long Houchen saw such a teacher. With his understanding of teacher, this was definitely the expression of his emotions from the bottom of his heart. Who is this old man? Is he Han Yu's elder? Because he wanted to be my retainer knight that day, he came to get back at me? Long Houchen's heart trembled, but he didn't say anything, and silently walked to the back of Yi Hua and stood still. Han Yu naturally saw him as well, but the current expression on Han Yu's face was very calm, and there wasn't the slightest bit of arrogance from before. The old man sitting opposite Yi Hua, wasn't he the Knight Alliance's holy knight Chang Han Qiu? When he saw Long Houchen, his eyes immediately lit up, and he said with a smile, "Yi Hua, you really raised a good disciple. Originally, I wanted you to pass my message to him, but since he came back so early, there's no need for that. Houchen, how was today's competition?" Hearing Yi Hua's voice, Long Houchen's eyes immediately widened. His memory was as good as his perception. Although this voice was very gentle, he immediately recognized the owner of this voice that had once left a deep impression on him. You are that holy knight Chang who was on the rostrum during the preliminaries?" Long Houchen said involuntarily. Han Qiu smiled and nodded and said, "That's right. It's rare for you to remember my voice." Yi Hua glanced at Long Houchen and said, "You still haven't answered Lord Holy Knight Chang's question." Long Houchen hurriedly said respectfully, "I won today's competition by luck." "By luck?" Han Qiu looked at him with a bit of surprise and said, "Tell me, who else in your group could make you use the word by luck?" Long Houchen nodded, and immediately, he gave a simple account of the battle between him and Wang Yuanyuan, with emphasis on describing Wang Yuanyuan's divine shield. Epic equipment. Han Qiu's expression changed and he frowned slightly. "I've heard of the mighty miracle god's inheritance. Their bloodline actually has a bloodline that has been passed down. This is a good thing for us humans. From the looks of it, this girl would become a target for the warrior temple to nurture in the near future. I can confirm that the bloodline equipment passed down by the mighty miracle god's bloodline is at least epic grade. However, I don't remember the mighty miracle god of the glorious era having a shield. From the looks of it, that little girl's divine giant soul shield should be a broken weapon. However, even so, if she could complete the 9 sockets embedding, she would definitely reach the epic level. This method of using the resonance of the 9 sockets to form a spirit force field has been lost. This holy knight was definitely very knowledgeable, and his knowledge was far greater than Yi Hua's. Not bad, not bad. To be able to win against this kind of equipment, you've brought glory to our Knights Templars." Han Qiu nodded in satisfaction. "Little Houchen, this time I came here especially to look for you. I won't hide it from you. My name is Han Qiu, and Han Yu is my grandson. However, this brat's performance in the Monster Hunters trials really disappointed me. That day, I told him to worship you as his master and become your retainer knight, and it wasn't a lie. Today, I brought him here, and I've also helped him settle the formalities for becoming a retainer knight. From now on, for 5 years, he can only be your retainer. His life, his everything is under your control, little Yu." "Little Yu." Han Yen signaled to his grandson. Han Yu hurriedly took a few steps forward, bowed slightly, and extended his left hand. Long Houchen suddenly saw a special mark on Han Yu's left palm. He didn't recognize this mark. Han Yen said, "This is the retainer knight contract. It's tentatively set for 5 years. You need to drip a drop of blood in the center of the contract. After the contract is completed, he can't disobey any of your orders for 5 years. At the same time, you only need to use your mind to control his life and death." Looking at Han Qiu's serious expression, Long Houchen couldn't help but say, "Lord Saint Knight, there's no need for that. I think Brother Han Yu was just careless for a moment." Han Qiu slowly stood up and said in a deep voice, "He wasn't just careless for a moment. This brat has some talent, but his character is seriously flawed. He's arrogant and willful, and he can't bear great responsibilities. But you are different. I see all the glory of a knight in you. Don't think that you've benefited from him becoming your retainer knight. In fact, he's gotten even more. By following you, not only can he join your monster hunters, but he can also learn a lot from you. These 5 years of tempering might really help him get on the right track and become an outstanding knight. This is also my goal. So, as his grandfather, I'm begging you to accept him as your retainer." While speaking, Han Qiu crossed his right fist in front of his chest and actually performed a standard knight's salute to Long Houchen. Long Houchen was startled and hurriedly returned the salute. "Lord Saint Knight, don't be like this. You're killing me, I promise." Yi Hua, who was standing at the side, didn't utter a single word from beginning to end. Han Qian had unabashedly stated the reason why she wanted Han Yu to become Long Houchen's retainer knight. She did it openly and straightforwardly, without any intention of concealing anything. Just this point alone was enough to make people admire her. What's more, having a rank 5 guardian knight by his side would greatly increase Long Houchen's safety. Fresh blood slowly dripped down and landed in the center of the retainer knight's contract rune. Even though Han Yu had already thought things through these few days, he still couldn't help but close his eyes at the moment when he was about to officially become someone else's retainer. When the blood dripped onto Han Yu's palm, it instantly turned into a layer of faint red light and disappeared. Immediately after, a red halo instantly spread out from the rune and spread to Han Yu's entire body. Han Yu shivered and subconsciously opened his eyes. Before he could even greet Long Houchen with the word master, a golden halo suddenly spread out. Suddenly, another ring of golden light rippled out from the rune. In an instant, Han Yu only felt that all 6 million pores on his body instantly opened up. From inside to outside, he felt a warmth and comfort that came completely from the source. It was as if his body had entered a hot spring, causing him to almost moan out loud. What's going on? Not to mention Yi Hua and Long Houchen, even Han Qiu was startled. This kind of situation was something that even the experienced and knowledgeable Saint Knight had never seen before. Han Yu himself was also a little dumbfounded. However, this feeling of comfort was real. He could feel that there was already a faint connection between him and Long Houchen. Moreover, it was very intimate, just like a family member.